chapter 15:14. If the Taishu scripture had a breakthrough, it could also allow Bai Xiaowen to temper his body, increase his attributes, and increase the upper limit of his true inner force. That would be amazing. Bai Xiaowen rising by 1 level was equivalent to others rising by 2 levels. Moreover, it was equivalent to the growth of a lord and a king-level evolver. The rules of the spiritual realm indicated that you were thinking of Peach. The breakthrough of the second profession book will strengthen your physical fitness and expand the upper limit of your true inner force, but it will only give you a 50% increase. As for whether you can learn new skills, it depends on whether the second profession book provides skills at the corresponding level. Bai Xiaowen sighed lightly. Well, this was not bad. Bai Xiaowen rising by 1 level was equivalent to others rising by 1.5 levels. In other words, it was the growth potential of a lord and half a king-level evolver added together. Now, Bai Xiaowen had completely understood the strength levels of evolvers and how to level up. Evolvers were also divided into low-level, mid-level, and high-level evolvers. Each stage also had 3 levels, similar to the awakened stage. He wondered if there were any level 20 evolvers. If there were, they should be top-level evolvers. However, evolvers' level up had nothing to do with how many monsters they killed or how many missions they completed. It all depended on whether the profession book had a breakthrough or not. If they broke through, they would level up. If they did not break through, they would be stuck. This point determined that a considerable number of evolvers would be stuck at a certain key level and would not be able to advance for a long time. There was also a particular way to differentiate the levels of the profession books. Take Tai Gong's Art of War as an example. There were a total of 3 chapters, the first, the middle, and the second. Previously, Bai Xiaowen was a level 11 evolver in the first chapter, beginner. Now, he was a level 12 evolver in the first chapter, advanced. From this, it could be inferred that when Bai Xiaowen cultivated the first chapter to the proficient level, he would grow into a level 13 evolver, which was also the limit of a low-level evolver. If he broke through again, he would have to cultivate the middle chapter. It was also divided into beginner, advanced, and proficient levels, which corresponded to the evolver's level of 14, 15, and 16. Then, the 3 mastery levels of the second chapter would definitely be the remaining levels of 17 to 19. The training speed of the profession manual determined the speed of an evolver's leveling. Every time he made a breakthrough in his cultivation, it would temper his body and expand his meridians. For example, right now, after Bai Xiaowen completed his breakthrough, he could clearly feel that his body was like a dry sponge, constantly absorbing spiritual particles from the surrounding spiritual energy to strengthen his physical fitness. This was the tempering of the body. More spiritual energy particles poured into Bai Xiaowen's meridians. As he breathed and circulated, they turned into pure true origin force and merged with the true origin force ball in Bai Xiaowen's Dantian region. During this process, Bai Xiaowen's meridians had also become wider and stronger, enough to support his explosive power. What if he used the Great Void Sutra as his starting job? The Great Void scripture had a total of 9 levels. Did each level correspond to the level of an evolver? One had to reach the proficient level of the current level and then cultivate to the next level before the upgrade would be triggered? Bai Xiaowen felt that it was very possible. As a king-level profession manual, the Great Void Sutra would definitely be much more difficult to cultivate. For example, at the awakened stage, if a hero-level awakened wanted to level up, they would need twice as much experience as a standard awakened. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen's starting job manual was not the Great Void Sutra. Otherwise, it would be too slow for him to level up. However, he could enjoy the benefits of the Great Void Sutra in advance, the powerful true origin force. In the previous exploration of the spirit realm, the true origin force's effect was extremely obvious. Moreover, other people's cultivation speed was slow, but Bai Xiaowen's cultivation speed was not. His aptitude and comprehension were top-notch. In the exploration of the spirit's realm, Bai Xiaowen could complete more and more difficult side quests and obtain more and higher-level light balls of enlightenment, which would accelerate his progress in cultivation. Bai Xiaowen's thoughts turned, and he began to check the improvements brought about by his breakthrough in the first chapter of The Art of War. First of all, the attribute points had increased by 45 points. 30 points were physical attributes, increasing his fighting ability, and 15 points were spiritual attribute, increasing his spiritual sense. Both were very important. Compared to the awakened stage, where a hero-level awaken would have a growth rate of 10 points, a Lord-level evolver's growth rate of 45 points could be considered astonishing. The 320 points of true origin force brought about an even greater improvement in strength. This was because the maximum amount of true origin force was directly proportional to the upper limit of the true origin force. For example, a flame essence with a total strength of 5 crystals could at most produce an attack with the strength of 1 crystal. This ratio is about 1/5 weaker. If one had a powerful skill, the instantaneous burst would definitely increase by a large margin. However, using a powerful skill would definitely put a burden on the body and cause a temporary shortage of spiritual power. There were gains and losses. However, this drawback did not stop evolvers and native powerhouses from pursuing powerful skills. Now that Bai Xiaowen had an upper limit of 1,711 points of true origin force, even if it was the most ordinary fist or foot attack, without any skills, the maximum amount of true origin force that could be attached to it could reach around 300 points. When Bai Xiaowen was fiercely fighting the tree demon in the ancient Buddha temple, he had used the Eye of Evolution to seal and use the 7 illusory consecutive slash. At that time, he had only erupted with around 300 points of true origin force. In other words, Bai Xiaowen did not use any skills now. When he slashed with his blade with all his strength, the power was close to that of the 7 illusory consecutive slash. If the Eye of Evolution sealed a powerful skill, the eruption would only be stronger. As for the new skills he had comprehended, array, as well as the 3 cornerstone arrays, Bai Xiaowen had already understood the origin, method of use, and function of this new skill early on in the process of cultivation and comprehension. He truly knew how it was done and why it was done. Array was a commander-type evolver. According to the terrain and the time of day, he could command an army to arrange a suitable formation and obtain a powerful commander-type skill. The 3 cornerstone arrays represented 3 directions: the arrow array that increased attack, including spiritual power attack; the sturdy wall array that increased defense, including spiritual power protection; the long wind array that increased speed, including movement speed and attack speed. All the subsequent military formations in the Art of War were derived from the foundation of these 3 cornerstone arrays. As for whether there were any strange formations that were separated from the cornerstone arrays, Bai Xiaowen was not clear at the moment. During the formation, he had to observe the terrain and the time of day to choose an advantageous formation. These knowledge abilities were all learned and mastered by Bai Xiaowen during this cultivation and comprehension. Army Prestige, Army Spirit, Array. With these 3 commander-type skills, the combat power of the army under my command can be greatly increased. As long as I go to the spiritual realm and recruit a group of indigenous experts, I have a great chance of guarding my territory. Bai Xiaowen had just stood up when suddenly, a slight hot feeling came from the storage bracelet. Chapter 15:15. Bai Xiaowen paused for a moment, then probed his storage bracelet with his spiritual sense. Inside the bracelet, 2 wooden dolls flickered faintly. The wooden dolls that Chenrong gave me? Bai Xiaowen took them out. There was a talisman hidden in the dolls that allowed Chenrong to sense Bai Xiaowen's position from a distance. However, Bai Xiaowen felt that once he left the Xiaowei plain, he would not be able to sense him anymore. However, Chenrong was not completely right. This talisman actually had a transmission function similar to the warning stone. When Bai Xiaowen's finger brushed across the talisman, a strand of spiritual sense was transmitted from the talisman. It poured into Bai Xiaowen's sea of consciousness and turned into a message. This kind of transmission could transmit a small amount of information. Compared to the simple warning function of the warning stone, it was many times more brilliant. Bai Xiaowen closed his eyes slightly. In his sea of consciousness, the message suddenly unfolded. A slightly illusory scene unfolded. It was a quiet room. Chenrong's face was slightly haggard as he muttered to himself in front of a pair of dolls on the table. His clear voice sounded, "I know that you like to wander the world, free and unrestrained. I really don't want to disturb your peaceful life. But this time, I really can't hold on any longer." Master failed in his closed-door cultivation and went crazy and disappeared. Grandfather's whereabouts are unknown. The Black Sky Demon sect has risen from the ashes with a large group of strange reinforcements. The elders don't believe me, and there is internal strife in the sect. I'm very sad. At this moment, I really hope that you can be by my side, comforting and encouraging me, just like when we were in ancient Scholar Town. At this point, the illusory scene dimmed a little. Chenrong revealed a haggard smile and slowly disappeared. Bai Xiaowen opened his eyes. Shangqing School's decline from its peak? The Black Sky Demon sect has risen from the ashes? Bai Xiaowen's finger lightly touched the dolls. He could actually feel a trace of spiritual power contained in the dolls, which was connected to the distance. There was no doubt that this pair of wood carvings was related to the other pair of wood carvings in Chenrong's hands. A thought flashed through Bai Xiaowen's mind. He quickly walked out and arrived in front of White Phoenix City's interplanar teleportation gate. He placed his palm on the teleportation steel. "I want to teleport to the Shao Plane. Is that possible?" The laws of the spiritual realm quickly gave him a notification. "It has been detected that you possess a locator item from the Shao Plane. You may teleport." Bai Xiaowen heaved a long sigh of relief. Sure enough, the wooden talisman carvings were similar to the positioning items in the awakened planes. In the world of evolvers, one could teleport to the target plane at a fixed point. No wonder those people from the Divine Court training camp could always be teleported to the spirit realm plane they wanted to go to during the period of great unification. They might have a more efficient way of locating things, and it was not limited to locating objects. His teammates noticed Bai Xiaowen's strange behavior and rushed over. "Xiaowen, are you going to the spirit realm?" Li Shui asked. Bai Xiaowen did not hide it from his teammates before. After his strength broke through, he went to the spirit realm to find strong reinforcements. This was his original plan. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. "Yes, there's a slight change in the original plan. I'm going to the Shao Plane again." Can you go to the target plane?" Li Shui asked in surprise. Bai Xiaowen nodded. "Captain, your start in the Shao Plane should be considered good. Being able to go to the Shao Plane will definitely be better than going to other unfamiliar planes," Qiao Rui said. Bai Xiaowen said, "There's more to my reason for going." He then told his teammates about the general situation. Cecilia said in surprise, "I didn't expect that Shangqing School would have such a big change. It's only been a month since we returned from the Shao Plane." Bai Xiaowen said, "I suspect that the fall of Shangqing School, especially the strange reinforcements that Chenrong mentioned, has something to do with the Tang dynasty." After a pause, Bai Xiaowen continued, "Think about it, Li Feng from the Tang dynasty can become an emissary of the Black Sky Sect's headquarters. In the known world of evolvers, teleportation to the spirit realm is through interplanar teleportation doors. It's basically equivalent to an unregistered person with no identity, which is an E-class ticket. Why does Li Feng have such a high identity? In the world of evolvers, there was no such thing as a ticket to the spirit realm. This was because under the rules of authenticity that allowed one to freely plunder spoils of war, the benefits of entering with an important identity such as a prestigious family or a prominent person were too terrifying. For example, if one obtained an A-class ticket, drew a prestigious family or a prominent identity, and directly entered with the identity of a sect's direct descendant, similar to Chenrong, how many additional benefits could one obtain? Just the sect's secret skill books alone could be learned at will. Not to mention, one could find an excuse to obtain a large number of spirit crystals and spiritual materials to assist in one's cultivation, just like a student in the Christian era who asked his parents for 588 yuan to buy review materials. He could do it with just an excuse. Under the rules of authenticity, these spirit crystals and spiritual materials could be directly brought out of the spirit realm. They were all real benefits. Therefore, in the world of evolvers, everyone who entered was an unregistered person. If one wanted to obtain benefits, they had to slowly operate. Li Feng's identity as an emissary of the Black Sky Sect's headquarters was definitely not obtained out of thin air. It must have been caused by the Tang dynasty's advance arrangements against the Black Sky Sect's forces in the Shao Plain. When Li Feng entered, it would be time to reap the rewards. If the plan went smoothly, not only would Li Feng be able to get a large number of rewards from the Attack the Shanqing School mission, but he would also be able to retrieve the 12 Wraith banners from the Black Sky Sect and bring them back to the Tang dynasty. It could be said that it was killing two birds with one stone, and it was a great harvest. However, this plan had been completely destroyed by Bai Xiaowen. However, Bai Xiaowen had reason to believe that the Tang dynasty had not given up on their evil intentions. They definitely had countless connections with the Black Sky Sect in the Shao Plain. From the number of strange reinforcements that Chenrong had described, it was very likely that the Tang dynasty had sent out a territorial army. The failure of the Shanqing School's leader to break through in seclusion was unknown if the Tang dynasty had done something. After all, evolvers were the best at such small acts of sabotage. The disappearance of Great Elder Chenjihou was definitely related to the Black Sky Sect. Logically and emotionally, Bai Xiaowen had to make another trip to the Shao Plain. He had 3 strategic goals. The first goal was to destroy the Tang dynasty's further plans and prevent the Tang dynasty from continuing to strengthen. The so-called weakening of the enemy was to strengthen oneself, and it could also cause the Tang dynasty to have one less ally in the Black Sky Sect. Why not? The second goal was to cooperate with the indigenous forces in the Shao Plain to attack the Tang dynasty's army and eliminate the Tang dynasty's armed forces. This was very important, and it was also Bai Xiaowen's attempt to make use of his advantages. As a command-type evolver, Bai Xiaowen was like a brilliant commander, but the territory's army was still a blank slate. However, in the spiritual realm, it was different to intervene in the conflict between the indigenous forces. There would definitely be an army under his command. If the Black Sky Sect and the Tang dynasty each mobilized an army with a combat power of 1,000, they would have a combat power of 2,000 in total. The combat power of Bai Xiaowen's army was 0, but he had the command-type ability to amplify the combat power by several times. Together with the original combat power of 1,000 in the Shanqing School, if they could reach 2,000 or even higher, this war would definitely be won. If they could eliminate the 1,000 combat power of the Tang dynasty, it would greatly reduce the threat of the Tang dynasty to the White Phoenix territory. As for the third goal, it was to establish a cooperative alliance with the Shanqing School. Bai Xiaowen's territory was in urgent need of experts to enter. To him, he felt more assured using the indigenous experts than evolvers, especially with Chenrong, who was the most suitable key person. Chapter 15-16. After listening to the 3 strategic objectives, his companions felt a sense of relief and a hint of joy. They had just evolved and started building their territory when they encountered the threat of war from a veteran territory like Tang Empire. Although they were very confident in Bai Xiaowen, the heavy pressure was like a mountain that pressed down on their hearts. This time, Bai Xiaowen did not disappoint them. The 3 strategic objectives he proposed had clearly outlined a blueprint for dealing with Tang Empire. At least they knew how to deal with Tang Empire and saw a glimmer of light in the darkness. The feasibility of the plan? Extremely high. For ordinary people, the first of the 3 strategic objectives, which was to destroy Tang Empire's plan, was probably impossible. However, Bai Xiaowen's ability to execute was obvious to all. Bai Xiaowen could definitely achieve these 3 strategic objectives. Can we go to Shaowei Plain with you? Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen checked and shook his head. No, only Cecilia, as my follower, can go with me. Currently, we haven't found a way to team up with evolved people. Cecilia smiled. I'll go with you. No. Bai Xiaowen rejected Cecilia's request without thinking. This trip to Shaowei Plain will involve us deeply in the conflict between the native forces. There will be many Lord-level enemies, and there will be Tang Empire. You don't have any equipment, and you don't have any powerful combat skills. Your level is too low. If you go, it will be too dangerous. Then you'll go alone? Li Shi asked in surprise. Bai Xiaowen nodded. That's right. I'll go alone. Take good care of your home. Don't fall behind the development of the territory and the progress of your personal cultivation. Qiao Rui suddenly smiled and said, I also think that Cecilia going is not a wise choice. Qiao Rui did not elaborate. The reason was simple. Who was the most important native powerhouse for Bai Xiaowen's trip to Shaowei Plain this time? Without a doubt, it was the next leader of Shangqing School, the new Lord-level powerhouse, Chen Rong, who admired Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen had a beauty by his side. She was like a third wheel in a big hindrance. Moreover, Cecilia's appearance was that of a blonde Western beauty. She was at a disadvantage in Shaowei Plain. Qiao Rui did not elaborate, and Bai Xiaowen naturally could not say it either. After bidding farewell to his teammates one by one, he held Qinrong's pair of talisman wood carvings and stepped into the interplanar portal. This time, he paid 84 spirit crystals. White light flashed. The slight sense of weightlessness disappeared, and Bai Xiaowen stepped on solid ground. He of Shao Shui of Shao. When his vision cleared, Bai Xiaowen took a closer look. The location he had cut into this time was actually the riverside. The autumn wind was bleak, and the fallen leaves drifted in the wind. Shaowei Plain in Song Lizong's era was really destitute. Bai Xiaowen looked into the distance and released his spiritual perception to search a large area. Finally, he found a place by the river that seemed to be inhabited. It was a ferry. Looking at the road sign, it was called Fenglingdu. Bai Xiaowen put on a bamboo hat to hide his appearance. This bamboo hat was an ordinary clothing item produced by the White Phoenix territory. It was not considered a piece of spiritual equipment. This had an advantage. He did not need to waste his true inner force to change his appearance, and he was not afraid of others seeing his true appearance. Bai Xiaowen entered a shabby inn in Fenglingdu. He wanted to find out where this place was and how to get to Shangqing School. He lifted the curtain and entered. The first thing he smelled was a rancid stench. Bai Xiaowen was stunned. The front hall of the inn was a large shared bed. In the center, there was a charcoal fire and boiling water. Many people from the pugilistic world were either lying or sitting on the bunks against the walls. Some of them took off their shoes and exposed their feet. The smell of stinky feet assaulted his senses. Why are there so many people from the pugilistic world? Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes slightly. It was very easy for him to distinguish whether they were from the pugilistic world or not. The passive mode of the Eye of Evolution swept past them. The aura of the pugilistic world could not be hidden. Of course, experts who had specially cultivated concealment skills and were strong could avoid the passive scanning of the Eye of Evolution. However, Bai Xiaowen did not think that he was so lucky that he could meet Ultraman so easily. These people from the pugilistic world were basically level 12 or 13. Their aura of spiritual power varied, but the strongest aura was not at the commander level. Those with real strength and status could not squeeze into a shared bed and smell the smell of feet. For example, Chief Steward Chen Meng, who was by Chen Rong's side, was already a rare expert in the pugilistic world. Only then could he compete with the wood and stone demons. Ordinary people from the pugilistic world might not even be able to catch up to the level of ordinary martial artists in the Qin caravan. Sir, are you here to stay? After Bai Xiaowen entered, the clerk behind the counter clasped his hands and greeted him. He was not very enthusiastic. Bai Xiaowen said, No, I'm not staying. I'm from Jiangning Prefecture. I went out on a boat to visit a friend. I didn't want the boat to be wrecked on the way back. I narrowly escaped. Now that I'm lost, I'd like to ask Brother Xiao'er to give me some pointers. Where's this place? The clerk saw that Bai Xiaowen's tone was gentle and polite, so he felt some sympathy. He replied, Sir, this is the territory of Tanzhou, which belongs to the Jinghu Path. If you want to go to Jiangning Prefecture, you only need to rent a boat. It's only a few hundred miles away. Thank you, Brother Xiao'er. Bai Xiaowen calculated in his mind. The location of the Shanqing school was also in the Jinghu Path, which was near Yayang County. This was Tanzhou, which was estimated to be only 500 or 600 miles away. It was not too far. While he was asking, Bai Xiaowen heard the group of people from the shared bed talking about the recent events in the pugilistic world. A lean man, bare-chested, said excitedly, "The biggest event in the pugilistic world today is undoubtedly the Iron Blood Cliff meeting. The heroes of the Jiangnan Six Paths are going to form an alliance at the Iron Blood Cliff. The famous masters of the Three Mountains and Five Islands are inviting heroes from all walks of life to come up with a plan to fight against the aggressive Black Sky Demon." Someone on the side jeered, "Water Monkey, everyone knows about the Iron Blood Cliff meeting. Who didn't come for it? Tell us something we don't know. You're well informed." The Water Monkey chuckled, "Okay, you know about the famous masters of the Three Mountains and Five Islands. However, there are also disciples of famous immortal sects participating in this meeting. If you're chosen by an immortal sect, you can even enter the sect to cultivate." Someone said, "Why don't you take a look at yourself? You want to cultivate? Maybe in your next life." The people on the side all roared with laughter. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and suddenly asked in a low voice, "Brother Xiao'er, where is the Iron Blood Cliff?" The clerk had received many guests from the south and was naturally well informed. He immediately said, "The Iron Blood Cliff's original name was Black Iron Cliff. This name was changed recently. After crossing the river, you'll reach it by walking 30 miles to the south." Chapter 15-17. Although Fenglingdu's Jianghu people were only second or third class in Xiaoding's world, they were still level 12 and had basic Jianghu intuition, which was perception. As an ordinary person in Xiaoding's world, the waiter was only level 5 or 6, so his words were easily heard by the nearby Jianghu people. Hearing Bai Xiaowen ask about Iron Blood Cliff, someone immediately came up to chat and ask about it. Bai Xiaowen took off his bamboo hat and claimed to be a scholar visiting a friend. He went out to increase his Jianghu knowledge and hoped to visit Iron Blood Cliff. With the territory's gold mines behind him, Bai Xiaowen's spiritual realm was not lacking in gold and silver. He took out a gold ingot and asked the waiter to boil some wine, then invited the Jianghu heroes to drink a cup. The Jianghu heroes all laughed, they all felt honored to be treated by this scholar. The person who talked to him took on everything, saying that he would cross the river today and attend the Iron Blood Cliff conference tomorrow night. He would definitely bring Mr. Liu along to protect him. This person introduced himself as Wang Tietjiang, who was quite famous in the Jianghu of Jiangnan. Bai Xiaowen glanced at him. Wang Tietjiang was level 13 and had a spiritual energy value of 1080. In Fenglingdu, he was considered a strong expert. Bai Xiaowen's strength was much higher than this group of Jianghu people, and his true inner force had a higher priority. If he deliberately restrained his aura, this group of people would not be able to see his depth and would only think that he was a weak scholar. Bai Xiaowen's participation in the Iron Blood Cliff conference was not a waste of time. He wanted to start from the bottom and understand the current situation of the Shanqing school and the Black Sky cult. He could go directly to Qinrong, but in the eyes of the Shanqing school's higher-ups, it would be difficult to obtain information from the bottom. In any case, Qinrong and the Shanqing school would not collapse in a short time. If the enemy was strong enough to completely overturn the Shanqing school in a few days, then it would be the same whether Bai Xiaowen was there or not. Bai Xiaowen also heard that the Iron Blood Cliff conference had immortal sect disciples participating, so he wanted to participate. He felt that this conference would not be so simple. The next night, at Iron Blood Cliff, heroes from all over had gathered. After Bai Xiaowen reached the top of the Iron Blood Cliff, he looked around. There were about 400 to 500 Jianghu players on the cliff. About 1/3 of them were elites, and there were also a few leaders. Their positions were obviously different from the others. They sat in the center, like stars surrounding the moon. Those few leader-level masters were not young. Based on how the other Jianghu people addressed them, they were the initiators of this meeting, the masters of the Three Mountains and Five Islands. The Three Mountains and Five Islands was the collective name for the forces of the pugilistic world in Shaowei Plain. It included 8 famous forces of the pugilistic world. Their influence in Jianghu was roughly the same as the 5 mountain sword sects' influence in Jianghu. Further up were cultivation schools such as the Shanqing school. Their status was much more prominent than the Three Mountains and Five Islands. Any random inter-sect elite disciple of the Shanqing school had the strength of a leader. The 8 masters of the Three Mountains and Five Islands were only at the level of a leader. The people of Jianghu all regarded the Shanqing school as a famous immortal sect. Every year, countless people racked their brains to enter the school, but most of them failed at the first stage. According to the rules of the Shanqing school, they did not accept people who were too old to enter the school. As for those famous people, such as the masters of the Three Mountains and Five Islands, they had also thought of sending their juniors who had never practiced martial arts before to the Shanqing school to cultivate. The reason why they chose the Shanqing school instead of the Black Sky sect, which was easier to enter, was very simple. The Black Sky sect had a low threshold, but the death rate was also high. Moreover, they were evil people who did many things without conscience. The Shanqing school was different. On one hand, it had a good reputation. On the other hand, after the juniors joined, at least they would not be inexplicably disappeared. However, the Shanqing school's admission requirements were too strict. It was difficult for these martial arts talents to even enter the outer sect of the Shanqing school. Every disciple who was accepted into the Shanqing school, even if it was an outer sect, would attract the envy of other Jianghu forces. This was 10 times, 100 times harder than entering Tsinghua University in the Christian era. And this time, they finally had the opportunity to come into contact with the disciples of the famous immortal sect. If they could make friends and win favors, the possibility of their juniors entering the Shanqing school might increase by a level. Therefore, the leaders of the Three Mountains and Five Islands, in the name of Jianghu morality, initiated this gathering. The Black Sky sect stirred up trouble this time. Even the forces of Jianghu were affected. Many villages and towns were destroyed by the Black Sky sect. Therefore, forming an alliance to support the Shanqing school and suppress the Black Sky sect was the banner of this Iron Blood Cliff Conference. With such a banner of righteousness, in addition to the influence of the Three Mountains and Five Islands, the Jianghu people from all sides naturally flocked like a flock of ducks. Many people wanted to see the demeanor of the immortal sect disciples, so that they could boast to others in the future. Mountain Lord Mo, with you leading everyone, the devil of the Black Sky sect is nothing to worry about. Ha ha ha. Island Lord Huang, I saw you last time when I came to celebrate my birthday. This time, in suppressing the devil of the Black Sky sect, I still need you to take the lead. In the bustling flattery, suddenly a neither yin nor yang voice sounded. You want to deal with the Black Sky sect with just you chickens and pottery dogs? Like a spark falling into a pot of oil, the Iron Blood Cliff was suddenly filled with curses. Who is tired of living, talking nonsense over there? Everyone, pay attention, there are Black Sky sect bastards mixed in. Come out quickly, your Lord Ba's big knife has been thirsty for a long time. Bai Xiaowen had already locked onto the young man who spoke. He was a little short, but had a handsome appearance, sitting in the crowd. With a sweep of the Eye of Evolution, this young man was level 13, and his spiritual energy value was 1,520 points. Another leader, although his level was not as high as the sect lord of the Three Mountains and Five Islands, his template strength was not low at all. But Bai Xiaowen felt that something was not right. Even if this young man's strength was not bad, he should not be so arrogant. After all, there were 400 to 500 Jianghu experts here, not to mention a knife. Even if one of them peed, it would be enough to make this young man swim in a pool of feces. Suddenly, under the Iron Blood Cliff, gray rays of light lit up. An obscure pressure enveloped the entire Iron Blood Cliff. The crowd was still looking for the person who spoke. When this pressure spread out, someone immediately shouted, "What's going on? I can't use my aura chi." Me too. That young man stood up, laughing. I already said, you chickens and pottery dogs want to deal with the Black Sky sect? Open your dog eyes, and see what's below the cliff. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. He did not need to see to know. Below, there was a group of undead army covered in black armor, their whole body covered in black fog. Looking at their numbers, there were about 200. And beside this undead army, there were 4 black-clothed people, each occupying a corner of the iron blood cliff. Obviously, these 4 people were the source of the obscure pressure. 8. Chapter 15:18. It's the Black Sky Cult Thieves. We've been tricked. The Jianghu martial artists' faces changed. Those with faster brains quickly reacted. The Black Sky Cult bastards, they had planned this long ago. Someone hurriedly went to find their backbone. Mountain Lord Mo, Island Lord Huang, what should we do? Soon after, something even more shocking happened. Among the 3 mountain and 5 island lords, Mountain Lord Mo and Island Lord Huang, who had high hopes, actually clustered around that eccentric young man, standing at the top of Iron Blood Cliff. That young man laughed loudly. Old Mo, Old Huang, quickly explained the situation to these stupid Jianghu people. Only by joining the Black Sky Cult can they live. Resistance can only lead to death. This time, the crowd exploded. No wonder the Black Sky Cult devils knew about the Iron Blood Cliff conference and made arrangements in advance. So the hosts of the conference, Old Mo and Old Huang, have already become the lackeys of the Black Sky Cult. The crowd was in an uproar, cursing and swearing incessantly. Waiting for the voices to calm down a little, Mountain Lord Mo stroked his beard and said, "Everyone, no need to be angry, let me introduce. This person beside me is the Black Sky Cult's holy son, Lord Lian. Below us is the Black Sky Cult's main altar emissary. Lord Li Chun led 200 ghost soldiers, and 6 elders of the cult to set up the Great Earth Fiend formation. Everyone's aura chi has already been sealed, you can't escape, resistance is a dead end. Why don't you join the Black Sky Cult? That's the right path." After these words were spoken, the cursing and swearing became even louder. These Jianghu people, no matter what kind of foul language they used, nothing was taboo. Mountain Lord Mo's aura was calm, stroking his beard and smiling, with a tolerance of self-preservation. The Black Sky Cult's holy son Lian, however, was impatient, and directly ordered, "Stupid and ignorant people, let's show them some colors first." Mountain Lord Mo and Island Lord Huang responded. The remaining 6 sect lords of the 3 mountain and 5 island were unwilling to be captured, and attacked one after another. However, they had already lost their gang chi and were basically like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Mountain Lord Mo and Island Lord Huang casually punched and slapped them heavily, causing them to fall to the ground and unable to move. A group of martial artists wanted to rush forward, relying on their advantage in numbers to surround and attack. However, they were struck by Mountain Chieftain Mo's flowing cloud flying sleeve, which sent out a large area of effect shockwave. They were immediately sent flying, each of them spurting out blood. Someone shouted, "Experts of the Black Sky Sect, I, Wang Tietjiang, admit defeat, can I not join in the fun?" As soon as these words were said, although it attracted the disdain of many people, there were also some people of the Jianghu who responded one after another. Lian took control of the situation and sneered, "You want to leave? It's not that easy. Today, either you join the Black Sky Cult and become its pawns, or you die here." There were also some hot-blooded Jianghu martial artists. "So be it. Do you think I'm afraid of death?" Lian looked at the crowd's commotion and sneered, "Do you think that death is the end of it? The methods of the Saint sect are not something trash like you can imagine. After killing the disobedient, I will detain your souls and torture you after death." These words were filled with a chilling aura. Even the hot-blooded Jianghu martial artists did not dare to speak out. In terms of battle strength, martial artists who cultivated aura chi and elemental energy cultivators were not fundamentally different. It was only the difference between warhawks and spellcasters. However, elemental energy cultivators had even more methods. Some methods were unheard of and unseen by martial artists. For example, setting up formations, drawing talismans, refining pills, refining weapons, or even the taboo soul detaining technique. Perhaps some Jianghu martial artists were not afraid of death. However, in the hands of elemental energy cultivators, death might not be the end. their souls would be detained and subjected to endless torture. Wang Tietjiang, who was beside Bai Xiaowen, said in a low voice, "Young Master Lu, I'm afraid that this time we will not succeed. Why don't we take a temporary measure and lower our heads first and pretend to join the Black Sky cult? After we escape from today's disaster, who would still recognize this group of devils?" Bai Xiaowen did not comment. Wang Tietjiang said loudly, "Lord Saint, we are willing to pledge allegiance to the Black Sky. Saint Sect, can you let us leave the mountain? We still have an unsettled mother at home. After we settle her down, I will be the first to join the Saint Sect. I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire for the Saint Sect." There were many people who had the same idea. Some said that there was no one to take care of their 3-year-old child, some said that their father was critically ill, and some said that next month would be their grandfather's 100th birthday. The central idea was that after they had taken care of their child, cured their father, and celebrated their grandfather's birthday, they would then serve the Black Sky cult. The Black Sky cult, Saint Lian said with a smile, "Well said, well said. The Saint Sect naturally will not be unreasonable." Wang Tietjiang and the others were overjoyed. However, Lian changed his tone. "You guys have surrendered verbally, but what if you are not convinced in your heart?" Wang Tietjiang hurriedly said, "Of course not, a man of character cannot go back on his words." Now, of course, it was impossible to go back on one's words. When the situation changed, they could use the common saying, "There is no need to talk about morality and honor with the demons of the Demons Sect," to take back what they had said. Lian sneered, "I only believe in practical actions." Saying so, Lian clapped his hands, and said to the group of black-clothed people below, "Bring him up." Immediately, 2 black-clothed people escorted a white-clothed man all the way up the Iron Blood Cliff. The Jianghu people along the way did not dare to stop them, nor did they have the ability to stop them. Bai Xiaowen swept a glance, narrowing his eyes slightly. He felt that the white-clothed man was somewhat familiar, but he did not know his name. Lian smiled. "This person is called Qin Changsheng, an inner disciple of the Shangqing school, and was captured by the Saint Sect. Today, the Saint Sect wants to subdue the heroes of Jiangnan, and this Qin Changsheng is the best proof of allegiance." Pausing for a moment, Lian took out a small silver knife, saying, "As long as you take this knife and cut off a piece of flesh from Qin Changsheng's body, you will be considered loyal to the Saint Sect, and pass the first test." Good, the news that there are immortal sect disciples participating in the Iron Blood Cliff meeting is indeed true, but the way they participate is a bit unexpected. Low whispers came from the crowd. Wang Tietjiang shouted loudly, "From the Saint Sect's words, there is a second test." Lian nodded slightly, "Of course. After passing the first test, you will have the qualifications to take the Corpse King pill, and from then on you will be under the Saint Sect's control." Corpse King pill? What is that? The Jianghu people did not understand the methods of the Black Sky sect, and looked at each other, somewhat puzzled. Lian said, "The Corpse King pill is a secret medicine of the Saint Sect. After taking it, your power will greatly increase. Therefore, only those who pass the first test and obtain the proof of allegiance will have the qualifications to take it." Suddenly someone shouted, "The Corpse King pill is a method to control us. After taking it, you must take the antidote regularly, otherwise the corpse worm will enter your brain, and there will be no cure. Everyone, do not be fooled." Chapter 15:19. Lian's face turned cold. Lifting his hand, a spiral of black qi shot out, transforming into a chain, dragging the person who spoke out from the crowd. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man. His cheeks were thin, his complexion sallow. Sweeping his gaze over the restless crowd, Lian coldly said, "Today I will use you to establish my might, to display the methods of my Black Sky Church to capture souls and take lives." Of the 2 black-clothed men who were escorting Qin Changsheng, one of them took out a long and narrow illusory sickle, the other took out a string of bells. The sickle man waved with force, the illusory sickle chopping towards the yellow-faced man. Strangely speaking, when this illusory sickle chopped down, there was no tragic scene of a head being separated from the body, not even a trace of blood flowed out. It was like an illusion passing by. But the yellow-faced man's body suddenly trembled, as if he was possessed, he began to tremble. The other black-clothed man immediately shook the bell. Ding dang, ding dang, the Jianghu people present all felt a wave of mental exhaustion, as if their souls were about to be pulled out of their bodies by this bell. The Jianghu people all shivered, hurriedly stabilizing their minds, resisting the pull of the bell. This pulling force was not strong. If the Jianghu people still had their aura qi, and automatically protected their minds, it would not even affect their battle prowess. Even if their aura qi was restricted, stabilizing their minds could still ensure that their souls were not pulled away. But the yellow-faced man was different. After being chopped by the illusory sickle, he had no way of resisting the pull of the bell. Under the ringing of the bell, half of the yellow-faced man's body stiffened and did not move, the other half was trembling intensely. Although people with eyes could not see the soul, they could still sense that the yellow-faced man was currently experiencing the pain of his soul being captured. Lian laughed loudly. "This is the result of offending our Black Sky Church. Ha ha, burp." Lian's laughter suddenly stopped. Because the black-clothed man who was controlling the bell suddenly screamed, throwing away the bell in his hand, he hugged his head and squatted down, howling miserably. Lian was shocked. "Li Wuxiu, what happened to you?" The black-clothed man called Li Wuxiu could not speak, but his nose, ears, eyes and mouth all had traces of blood. "Who is it? Who dares to go against Black Sky Sect?" Lian's eyes were cold as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Li Wuxiu hugged his head, his finger pointing in the direction of Wang Iron Spear. Wang Tiqiang hurriedly said, "It wasn't me." He quickly retreated. Under Lian's forceful gaze, the other pugilistic world guests in the vicinity also retreated. This time, Bai Xiaowen, the only one who did not retreat, stood out. He wore a conical bamboo hat and stood tall. Although he was wearing a conical bamboo hat, one could still feel an extraordinary temperament that was different from the people of Jianghu present. Lian finally found the right person. He could feel that this bamboo hat man had a pure essence energy aura that had just calmed down. It was obvious that the person who had plotted against Li Wuxiu was this person. "Who are you?" Bai Xiaowen gently took off his bamboo hat. "Lu Wan." Of course, there was a reason why he revealed his true face and used his real name here. Many of the Jianghu guests present exclaimed when they heard the name L.V. Wang. It's hero L.V. Wang who turned the tide and defeated the 13 experts of the demon sect at the Shanqing School's Sword Trial Valley. It is said that hero L.V. Wang was surrounded by the 6 experts of the demon sect at the Tsangzhou Ancient Road and killed all of them. "That's great, hero L.V. Wang is actually at the Iron Blood Cliff, we are saved." Bai Xiaowen's battle record at the Sword Trial Valley was originally a secret. The experts of the righteous faction only knew that someone had turned the tide and foiled the demon sect's plot, but they did not know that it was done by L.V. Wang. Later on, the Black Sky Sect issued a warrant for L.V. Wang, causing the legend of L.V. Wang to appear in Jianghu. It also made the experts of the righteous faction know that L.V. Wang was the hero who had saved them. It could be said that the current identity of L.V. Wang was not inferior to the elders of the Shanqing School, and even surpassed them. After all, the righteous faction, including the Shanqing School, owed him a debt of gratitude for saving their lives. As for the battle record at the Tsangzhou Ancient Road, Bai Xiaowen only killed 2 branch leaders. The other 4 branch leaders all died at the hands of the super-fierce girl Chenrong. But Chenrong came and went secretly in order to cover up the fact that Tangren was a spy of the Black Sky Sect, so this battle record was naturally recorded on Bai Xiaowen's head. Wang Tiqiang was a bit dazed, looking at Bai Xiaowen. What happened to the lost scholar? Why did he suddenly become hero L.V. Wang? Wang Tiqiang thought. Hero L.V. Wang, wonderful. In this situation, other than hero L.V. Wang, who else could save everyone? Was my performance just now a bit too spineless? I won't be despised by hero L.V. Wang, right? Wang Tiqiang was worried about his gains and losses. Lian's heart tightened, and he took a step back. L.V. Wang. The Holy Faction was looking for you, but you delivered yourself to our doorstep. Bai Xiaowen tilted his head. You're called Lian? Black Sky Sect's holy son? Looks like you don't have much ability, did you become the Holy Sun through the back door? Li Yan's breath stagnated, and he shouted, mind your own business. That unlucky yellow-faced man had his life saved, and he took this opportunity to sneak back into the crowd. Bai Xiaowen squinted his eyes. After the formation of the Earth Termination Formation, Bai Xiaowen had been enduring, letting Li Yan do whatever he wanted. Of course, he didn't have the boring idea of waiting for the crucial moment to make a move. The reason why he kept silent was because he was using the Eye of Evolution to observe the formation and find a breakthrough point for the elemental energy nodes. Now, he had a card up his sleeve and was very confident that he could break the formation. Furthermore, Li Wushu's bell, which was specially used to attract souls, had triggered the counterattack of the Eye of Evolution. Bai Xiaowen also admired that yellow-faced man who dared to speak out. He could certainly suppress the restlessness of his elemental energy and prevent the counterattack of the Eye of Evolution, thus gaining more time to prepare to break the formation, but the yellow-faced man wouldn't be able to survive. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen didn't suppress his elemental energy, and injected it into the Eye of Evolution. He immediately launched a counterattack, injuring Li Wushu's soul and causing him to bleed from his orifices. At this moment, Bai Xiaowen was mocking Li Yan for being weak and becoming the Holy Sun through the back door, but in reality, he was using his words to buy some time. As expected, Li Yan flew into a rage out of humiliation, and said sternly, "LV Wang. Don't think that you can do anything just because you're here. Under the power of the Earth Termination Formation, your abilities will be greatly reduced." Bai Xiaowen laughed lightly, "Is that so? How is this Earth Termination Formation compared to the Spirit Training Formation?" Li Yan's aura suddenly dropped. This Earth Termination Formation was used to imprison these people, and naturally couldn't compare to the Spirit Training Formation formed by the 12 Grievances banner in the Sword Testing Valley. The Spirit Training Formation was used to suppress the suzerain experts of the righteous faction. Bai Xiaowen suddenly laughed out loud. Amidst his laughter, a series of explosions could be heard from below the Iron Blood Cliff. Following this explosion, the obscure pressure that pervaded the entire Iron Blood Cliff disappeared without a trace, and the martial artists of the martial world could once again use their earth energy. The Earth Termination Formation was broken. Chapter 1520. My earth energy has recovered? Me too. Hero Lu Wang has broken the Black Sky Cult's formation. The martial artists of Iron Blood Cliff all shouted excitedly. Then, hundreds of martial artists stared at the top of the cliff. Li Yan, Mountain Lord Mo, and Island Lord Huang, the two subordinates of Black Sky Cult that were escorting the Shangqing school disciple Qin Changsheng, Li Wushu and Li Wuhui, were the first to fall. Kill these two bastards. Everyone attack together, there's no need to talk about righteousness with the Black Sky Cult. The martial artists all rushed forward, and in the explosion of earth energy, Li Wushu and Li Wuhui were both killed on the spot. Although the majority of the martial artists of Iron Blood Cliff were normal and elite, there was strength in numbers. The two subordinates of Black Sky Cult had no power to resist at all. Not to mention, among these martial artists, there were the other 6 sect leaders of the 3 mountains and 5 islands. They were all commander-level martial artists, and their strength was equivalent to the branch leaders of Black Sky Cult. Li Yan anxiously shouted, "Envoy Li Chun, why aren't you attacking?" Below the cliff, Black Sky Cult Envoy Li Chun immediately led 200 elite undead troops and rushed to the top of the cliff to support Li Yan. The martial artists of Jianghu nearby all shouted as they pulled out their swords to welcome them. They were still holding back their anger. The 200 undead troops were only at the elite level in terms of individual strength. Compared to the martial artists of Jianghu, they had no advantage in terms of individual strength, and their numbers were even worse. Why would the martial artists of Jianghu be afraid? Underworld Demon Army, Spiritual Energy Coordination. Li Chun loudly ordered. The 200 undead troops were covered in black energy, and each of them had metal armor, swords, and shields. They walked in unison. As they walked, one could faintly feel the aura of a military formation. The 200 troops were like a single entity, and their spiritual energy was gradually synchronized. Spiritual energy coordination? This is the ability of the command system. Bai Xiaowen's pupils constricted. He quickly realized that this Li Chun was a command system evolver. Spiritual energy coordination wasn't a powerful offensive ability, but a state. Under the state of spiritual energy coordination, the commander could integrate the spiritual energy of the troops under him, and unleash a powerful combined attack. This was the unique ability of control-type evolvers. Bai Xiaowen's understanding of the coordination of spiritual energy was only from reading the first chapter of Tai Gong's Art of War. With his advanced mastery of the first chapter, he was able to coordinate the spiritual energy of his troops. However, after the coordination of the spiritual energy, there was no clue as to how to mobilize the spiritual energy of the troops under his command to complete a powerful joint attack. According to the cultivation progress of the first chapter of the Art of War, Bai Xiaowen should be able to master the joint attack skill only after he reached the proficient level of the first chapter. Brothers in front, be careful. Be on full alert. Bai Xiaowen raised his voice and shouted. The dozens of Jianghu martial artists at the front were slightly stunned. At this moment, Li Chun had already given another order. Underworld Demon Army, 3 feet in front of you, kill. The 200 Underworld Demon Army soldiers stopped in an orderly manner. The 100 people at the front stepped out and waved their swords that were wrapped in black gas in their right hands. In an instant, a gigantic black sword chi shot out. Its target was 30 feet ahead, which was where the dozens of martial artists of the pugilistic world were. Rumble! The ground of the Iron Blood Cliff shook. The dozens of martial artists at the front coughed up blood and fell to the ground without even making a sound. Their protective chi was shattered at the same time. In front of the Underworld Demon Army, the gigantic black sword chi plowed out a huge scar of destruction. Dust slowly settled. This attack made the martial artists of the pugilistic world on the Iron Blood Cliff shrink their pupils. Their hearts were filled with coldness. This joint attack was too powerful. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. He could see the strength of this attack. It looked powerful, but in reality, the strength of the attack was not exaggerated if it was calculated by the number of crystals. It was about 30 to 40 crystals. The strength of an Underworld Demon Army's aura was about 10 crystals. The sword chi from a normal attack was about 1 crystal. 100 Underworld Demon Army soldiers attacking at the same time should have a total of 100 crystals of sword chi. However, when the spiritual energy coordination gathered and turned into a large-scale sword chi, the sword chi only had a strength of 30 crystals. Then, did this mean that the spiritual energy coordination was a useless skill? No, this was a godly skill. The most important point was that without the spiritual energy coordination, a total of 100 crystals of sword chi was actually not that scary. This was because the sword chi was scattered and not unified. Its strength would be divided too much. However, with the spiritual energy coordination, even if the sword chi only had a strength of 30 crystals, it would still be a concentrated attack. It was at least equivalent to the power of a suzerain of the same level. For example, if a rainstorm poured down from the sky and landed on a mountain rock, even if it rained for a day and a night, the mountain rock would still not move because its strength was scattered. However, if the water droplets from the stalactites in the cave all hit the same point, it would accumulate over time and be able to penetrate the rock. In terms of water volume, the water droplets from the stalactites were far less violent than the rainstorm. It was strong because it was uniform and its strength was concentrated. Among the people present, only Bai Xiaowen, a control-type martial artist, could see the trick behind this joint attack of the Underworld Demon Army. The other martial artists of the pugilistic world could not see the details and fell into a panic. There were still a few people who did not believe it and thought that this attack could only be used once. They took advantage of the time when their opponents were recovering and rushed over. In the end, the front group of the Underworld Demon Army retreated and the back group advanced. Another joint attack was launched. The huge black sword chi shot out again. After the martial artists of the pugilistic world threw down a few more corpses, they all fled back to the direction of the cliff and to Bai Xiaowen's side. Lian, who was at the highest point of the cliff, was originally very cold at the top. He was surrounded by many martial artists of the pugilistic world and was trembling in fear. But now, he had a sense of superiority as if he was looking down on ants. After sighing in his heart that his allies were really powerful, Lian shouted loudly, "Do you see this? This is the result of going against the saint. Lu Wang, do you think that everything will be fine after breaking the Earth Termination formation? Wrong. In front of our allies, you are just a pile of loose sand. You have no chance of winning." The martial artists of the pugilistic world looked at Bai Xiaowen blankly. "Hero Lu Wang, what should we do?" "Hero Lu Wang. Only you can save everyone." Bai Xiaowen looked at the commander of the underworld demon army, the so-called special envoy of the Black Sky sect, Li Chun. Li Chun was also looking at him. At the same time, he commanded the underworld demon army to close in on him. Li Chun was not trying to pressure him. It was just that under the state of coordination of spiritual energy, the underworld demon army could not move faster even if they wanted to. Bai Xiaowen looked at the martial artists of the pugilistic world around him. Under their hopeful gazes, he slowly opened his mouth. The Black Sky sect's demonic army uses a type of battle formation to command. To be honest, I am also proficient in the art of battle formation command. I believe that I am not inferior to the Black Sky sect's demons. However, to fully unleash the power of battle formation command, I need everyone to work together and obey orders. Then, on this iron blood cliff, can everyone obey orders? Chapter 1521. As soon as Bai Xiaowen finished speaking, the group of Jianghu martial artists scrambled to answer loudly. "Hero Lu, we'll listen to you. Whoever doesn't listen to Hero Lu Wang's orders is an enemy of the Five Tigers Hall. Now that things have come to this, only Hero Lu Wang can save us." Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "All right, then I'll accept your orders and take over the command." He shook his hands and sent out 2 Dao technique seals, which landed on the empty space on both sides. "Brothers on my left, go to the left seal and line up. Brothers on my right, go to the right seal and line up." The Jianghu martial artists at the Iron Blood Cliff immediately rushed to the location of the Dao technique seals like ants. Although their speed was quite fast, compared to the underworld demon army, they were still a little messy and did not form a formation. After all, they were Jianghu martial artists. Most of them were loners and had little experience in battle. They could not be compared to professional soldiers. Bai Xiaowen was already mentally prepared for this. He raised his hand and summoned Kits and Delifa to restrain the Jianghu martial artists on both sides and form a formation. It had to be said that when faced with a huge threat, one's potential would always be stimulated. These wild and unruly Jianghu martial artists were able to restrain their personalities when it was a matter of life and death. They followed Kits and Delifa's orders and obediently formed a formation. Among them, there were even 6 master-level experts from the 3 mountains and 5 islands. Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and raised his hands slightly, clenching them into fists. Formation of the impregnable wall. One of the 3 cornerstone formations, the formation of the impregnable wall. This was the Iron Blood Cliff. It was high up and easy to defend but difficult to attack. The terrain and the formation of the impregnable wall complemented each other perfectly. Bai Xiaowen's true core force turned into a white light fog and enveloped the 2 formations formed by the Jianghu martial artists on both sides. Beside Bai Xiaowen were the 6 Terror Knights led by the Death Knight, as well as 10 Ghoul Archers and so on. They formed an undead formation, which was also the personal troops that Bai Xiaowen had planted his elemental energy imprint on. They were also enveloped by the white fog. In an instant, the Jianghu martial artists in the light fog felt something strange. The warriors at the forefront felt it the clearest. They suddenly felt that when they used their aura chi to protect their bodies, it had become much more solid, and it faintly resonated with the aura chi of the other martial artists on the periphery. For example, the ground was originally full of rocks, but now, it was piled up by mud and turned into a stone dam. This was the effect of the impregnable wall formation, strengthening the defensive capabilities of the entire army. Those martial artists at the front had their protective aura shield strengthened by at least 20%, which was equivalent to them wearing an additional spiritual energy shield that increased their spiritual energy by 2 levels. Moreover, the stellar energy of each martial artist resonated with the stellar energy of the other martial artists nearby, allowing them to distribute the damage to the others. Combine the formation. The left formation is in the front and the right formation is in the back. Bai Xiaowen raised his left and right fists and suddenly closed them in the center. However, his left fist protruded a little. Kits and Delifa led the 2 groups of Jianghu warriors to the left and right respectively, and slowly moved closer to the center. Soon, they completed the formation according to Bai Xiaowen's orders. At this moment, the underworld demon army led by Li Chun finally arrived. LV Wang is actually a control-type evolver. He must be a control-type overlord with a 7-point priority. At first, Li Chun was very shocked in his heart. As the Tang dynasty's prince, when he came to Shaowei Plain, he was told all the information about LV Wang. Of course, it was the information that the Tang dynasty currently had. Therefore, Li Chun knew about Bai Xiaowen's overlord identity. However, after the initial shock, Li Chun quickly regained his composure. So what if he was a control-type overlord? LV Wang's level was too low. According to the information, he was only level 11. Even if he was an overlord, he definitely had not grasped the essence of the control type. As for Li Chun himself, he was already a level 13 control-type evolver, and he cultivated a 6-point priority scripture, which was not much worse than an overlord. Moreover, Li Chun's subordinates were the well-trained underworld demon army. One of the Tang dynasty's elite troops. I, Li Chun, will defeat a control-type overlord here. I also encountered LV Wang, but my results are completely different from Li Feng's 5. Father will definitely see me in a new light. Li Chun was overwhelmed with emotions. Even though Bai Xiaowen had formed the impregnable wall formation, Li Chun still felt that he had victory in his hands. He shouted, "Front line of the underworld demon army, /10 meters in front." Swoosh! Another huge black sword aura shot out. The power of this sword aura made the underworld martial artists under Bai Xiaowen tremble. This was an ultimate move that was comparable to an overlord's. The 20 or so people who had just died were a bloody example. The impregnable wall formation's light trembled slightly. The underworld martial artists at the front even had thoughts of running away. Li Chun's lips curled into a cold smile. As expected, they were all a motley crew. If they were afraid, even the best formation would be messed up. No matter how strong the commander was, he would be helpless. At this moment, a clear voice sounded. "Don't panic. We will definitely be able to block it." The voice spread slightly with the support of true inner force. Empathy. Bai Xiaowen had used this special technique again. With the help of the empathy technique, the underworld martial artists under his command had an inexplicable strong trust in Bai Xiaowen. "We will be able to block it." Hero Lu said that we will definitely be able to block it. The underworld martial artists who had thoughts of running away all stopped in their tracks and stayed where they were. Correspondingly, they also activated their protective auras to the strongest state. Boom! With a loud sound, the huge black sword aura crashed into the impregnable wall formation's light fog. The first to bear the brunt was Wang Tietjian. His face was already pale as he closed his eyes and waited for death. However, the moment the huge black sword aura touched him, the protective chi of the underworld martial artists on his left and right automatically surged over and filled the protective chi wall in front of Wang Tietjian. At this moment, the impregnable wall formation was like a badminton racket, and the huge black sword aura was like a flying badminton. The moment the sword aura touched the net, the point of contact was naturally deformed. However, the grids in the surrounding areas took a large amount of pressure off the point of contact and forcibly removed the roaring impact force. After the removal of the force, there was a rebound. Of course, the impregnable wall formation was not strong enough, and this group of underworld martial artists had not undergone any training. The rebound force that should have been produced dissipated when it was only 1 or 2 meters away from the body because it was not solid enough. However, Bai Xiaowen did not need the rebound effect. Wang Qiqiang took 2 steps back and subconsciously touched himself. He was unharmed. Other than the severe depletion of his protective qi, there was not even a scratch on his body. He blocked it. Hero Lu is right. He blocked it. Li Chun's face was as calm as water, and his heart was in turmoil. Chapter 1522. How is this possible? Using a rubbish army formation that was put together at the last minute to block the combined attack of my underworld demonic army. Is LV Wang's commanding ability that much stronger than mine? He's only level 11. Is a Lord-level command-type evolver really that strong? Li Chun stared at Bai Xiaowen, who was surrounded by the crowd. His expression changed and he was shocked. What he did not know was that Bai Xiaowen had already used a Class 5A Hero's Light Ball of Insight to complete a breakthrough in the first chapter of Tai Gong's Art of War and reached level 12. If he was only level 11, Bai Xiaowen wouldn't know the formation skill. Of course, with a level 12 command-type ability, he was able to fight against Li Chun, who was level 13 and had a well-trained elite army. It was indeed because the Art of War was strong enough. Even among the Lord-level professional manuals, it was at the top level. This was because Bai Xiaowen's contribution to the War of Unification was too high. That meant that the highest priority for an awakened evolver was 7 points. Bai Xiaowen had only obtained a Lord-level professional manual. Otherwise, with the achievement of ending the 3 kingdoms and establishing an empire, it wouldn't be too much for him to reach king level. Although Li Chun was shocked, he could only brace himself because Li Yan was still at the top of the Iron Blood Cliff. Li Yan himself wasn't a powerful character, but his background was extremely important. He was the only son of the Black Sky Sect's leader. Otherwise, with Li Yan's scheming and strength, he wouldn't be worthy of the position of the Black Sky Sect's holy son. It was because of his good reincarnation that he had such a special position in the Black Sky Sect. If he gave up on Li Yan, the Black Sky Sect's leader would definitely be furious. Underworld Demonic Army, take 3 steps forward. Li Chun ordered again. Seeing that the Underworld Demonic Army was advancing instead of retreating, Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. Li Chun still wants to attack? This is to support Li Yan. Otherwise, once he retreats, Li Yan will definitely be chopped into pieces by the angry martial artists. However, if I were Li Chun, I would definitely strategically give up on Li Yan. If the upper echelons of the Black Sky Sect place special importance on Li Yan, that would be even better. In any case, Li Yan's death would not cause any loss to the Black Sky Sect's forces. Instead, it would cause the upper echelons of the Black Sky Sect to be enraged, and they would invest heavily in the following battles for revenge. This is definitely a good thing for Great Tang. This thought flashed through Bai Xiaowen's mind for 0.1 seconds before he shook his head with a smile. The first time they managed to fend off the combined attack of the Underworld Demon Army, the confidence of the Jianghu martial artists was greatly boosted. There was no need for Bai Xiaowen to use her special skill, empathy, to boost their confidence. The next step was to launch a counterattack. Although the martial artists of the pugilistic world had different orders, their numbers were double that of the 200 Underworld Demon Army. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen had a natural advantage against undead creatures. Underworld Demon Army, both front and back, kill them together. Li Chun shouted loudly. Instantly, the 200 warriors of the Underworld Demon Army all slashed out with their swords. 2 gigantic black sword chis, one on the left and one on the right, swept towards Bai Xiaowen's impregnable wall formation. It's useless. From the start, I had split the martial artists of the pugilistic world into 2 groups to fend off your front and back. If Li Chun could combine the attacks of the 200 Underworld Demon Army into one powerful sword chi, he might be able to break through the impregnable wall formation. However, Li Chun obviously did not have the ability to combine the 200 Underworld Demon Army into one. He could only combine the two sword chis into 100 groups in an attempt to replace the strength of the attack with quantity. This wasn't enough. Bai Xiaowen immediately gave the order. The two groups on the left and right went up against the gigantic black sword chi. After the deafening noises, like a giant wave crashing into a reef, the front line of the impregnable wall array was back to normal after a circle of ripples. The group of martial artists of the pugilistic world were so excited that they jumped and scolded their opponents. From these two clashes, Bai Xiaowen also realized the limits of the combined attack of the underworld demon army. A gigantic black sword chi could only affect the gang chis of less than 100 martial artists of the pugilistic world. In other words, the number of people in the two groups on the left and right was somewhat excessive. To fend off the combined attack of the underworld demon army, Bai Xiaowen only needed 200 martial artists of the pugilistic world. Everyone, listen to my order. The two groups at the back retreat and gather under the third Dao technique imprint. Bai Xiaowen sent out the third Dao technique imprint with a shake of his hand. At the same time, he ordered Kits and Delifa to each circle around 100 martial artists of the pugilistic world in the two groups on the left and right. A total of 300 martial artists gathered under the new Dao technique imprint. These 300 martial artists, under the command of Kits and Delifa, quickly formed a triangular formation. Arrow formation. Bai Xiaowen sent out another burst of essential inner force. A pale white mist enveloped the triangular formation. Instantly, all the martial artists of the pugilistic world in the formation felt the change. Originally, when the gang chis were used to protect the body, it was abnormally thick and increased by about 20%. Now, the increase in protection had disappeared. However, when the gang chis were released, the strength of the attacks was increased by a little. However, the strength was not obvious, only about 10%. Bai Xiaowen pondered for a moment. This was probably due to the terrain. The increase in the arrow formation was not as good as that of the sturdy wall formation. It only increased the spiritual energy by 10%. However, having an increase was better than having none. Sturdy wall formation, take the flanks, arrow formation, charge forward. Bai Xiaowen ordered. At the same time, he rode on the Wrath Claw and stood at the front of the arrow formation. I will lead the charge. Bai Xiaowen said silently in his heart. In the sturdy wall formation, everyone was able to maintain their positions under the influence of empathy and defend with all their might. However, if they were to form the arrow formation and charge at the front, these martial artists of the pugilistic world might not be willing. Even empathy might not work. Empathy could be understood as a powerful persuasion technique based on one's charisma. This had to be established under certain objective conditions. For example, everyone was facing a common enemy and there was no way out if they ran away. The identity of LV Wang had a high reputation among the martial artists of the pugilistic world. It was impossible to rely on empathy to brainwash the enemy and forcefully change their minds. This was because this was the function of the bewitching talisman. Taigong's Art of War was a military book of command. It was not a Huaxia Taoist scripture. Bai Xiaowen led the 300 martial artists of the pugilistic world with a wolf in the lead. No matter when, charge with me was always more convincing than charge for me. The arrow formation took advantage of the gap between the underworld demon army and shot out from the middle like an arrow towards the underworld demon army. LV Wang is charging over personally. Great, this is great. Li Chun immediately ordered, backline of the underworld demon army, transmit your spiritual power. At the backline of the underworld demon army, many palms emitting black gas pressed against the backs of the undead race warriors in the front. Waves of black gas surged into the bodies of the undead race warriors in the front. The underworld demon army in the front needed a short time to recover after the joint attack. Now, the time to recover was greatly shortened. In the blink of an eye, they were full of energy. Under Li Chun's orders, another huge black sword aura was formed. Its target was the arrow formation led by Bai Xiaowen. It was obvious that the arrow formation did not have the strong defensive power of the sturdy wall formation. Instead, it was strong in its attacking power. As long as this attack was launched, the enemy would definitely not be able to block it. In Li Chun's mind, the tragic scene of the arrow formation being forcefully split apart by the underworld demon army's joint attack appeared. However, the underworld demon army in the front suddenly froze. The spiritual power that was originally in harmony was now in disorder. Chapter 1523. The formation at the front of the underworld demon army suddenly became chaotic. The next joint attack that they were preparing could not be executed. It looked as if the underworld demon army had lost their ability to react due to panic under the attack of the arrow formation. F***CK. Panic my ass. Li Chun could not believe it. How could the F***King undead have morale? How could they be afraid? At the front of the arrow formation, Bai Xiaowen, who was riding on a giant wolf, had already put on the Grim Reaper's visage. An aura that targeted the undead was released without reservation. Normal life forms would not feel the aura of the Grim Reaper's visage. However, to the undead, this aura was as dazzling as an extremely powerful searchlight. Kill! Bai Xiaowen led the charge and charged into the chaotic formation of the underworld demon army. He raised his 1,000 men and slashed horizontally without any fancy moves. Although there were no special moves, as a level 12 overlord, this slash was imbued with 300 points of true inner force. It had already surpassed the power of a normal leader's skill. Under the suppression of the Grim Reaper's visage, the underworld demon army's undead soldiers did not completely lose their ability to fight. However, their ability to use their spiritual power was reduced by at least 30%. The most important thing was that their bodies had become rigid, and their reaction speed had decreased by a lot. The first unlucky underworld demon army soldier was slashed into two by Bai Xiaowen's 1,000 men slash. This slash did not lose its momentum. The sword energy that shot out from the slash left a gaping wound on the waist of the second underworld demon army soldier. Hero Lu is mighty. Hero Lu is invincible. In the arrow formation, the 300 underworld martial artists seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They roared and charged forward, trying their best to kill the underworld demon army soldiers. The arrow formation is messed up. Bai Xiaowen shook his head slightly. As expected of a group of underworld martial artists who had not gone through strict training, they could still manage to set up a static formation, the impregnable wall formation. However, they could not do such a dynamic formation, the arrow formation. After engaging in battle with the enemy, the underworld martial artists would often fight individually. There was no unity to speak of. It should be known that the arrow formation had the ability to break formation. If the entire army was well trained and maintained the arrow formation, they could forcibly pierce through the enemy's formation. Once the enemy's formation was thrown into chaos, all the bonuses of the enemy's formation would no longer exist. Luckily, they were fighting against the underworld demon army, an undead army. Bai Xiaowen's Grim Reaper's countenance had the effect of suppressing undead enemies. Therefore, even if they did not maintain the arrow formation, Bai Xiaowen's 300 warriors would still win. Retreat. Underworld demon army, bring up the rear. Li Chun realized that the situation was hopeless and decisively gave the order to retreat. Every time an underworld demon army soldier was killed, his heart would bleed. It was not that the underworld demon army soldiers were precious, but the cost of transporting them from the territory to the Shaoding Plain was too high. Even though the Great Tang Territory and the Black Sky Sect had agreed to split the transportation costs after discussing with the Black Sky Sect, to the Great Tang Territory, the transportation of 200 giant barbarian soldiers and 200 underworld demon soldiers was still a heavy financial expenditure. If this underworld demon army was annihilated here, Li Chun did not dare to imagine what the consequences would be. The underworld demon army at the back, as well as a portion of the underworld demon army at the front, and those who had not yet engaged in battle, quickly retreated. Only the underworld demon army soldiers at the front that were fighting against Bai Xiaowen faithfully carried out Li Chun's orders. Black gas surged from their bodies as they unleashed their spiritual energy without caring about the cost to stop Bai Xiaowen and the 300 warriors. This kind of spiritual energy explosion obviously came with a price. The underworld demon army soldiers who were in their explosive state could no longer move. Chase! Hero Lu Wan, let's chase after them. Bai Xiaowen shook his head calmly. No need. Don't chase after a cornered enemy. Bai Xiaowen's eye of evolution swept over and could see that the spiritual energy core in the underworld demon army soldiers' bodies, which was equivalent to the true inner force light ball in their dantian, was rapidly churning like a powder keg in a critical state. In a few seconds, it would explode. Self-destruction. This was not a rare ability. However, it was rare for someone to be willing to learn the self-destruction ability, regardless of whether they were natives or evolvers. Those who dared to turn themselves into explosive bags that were sure to die and still wanted to trick the enemy before they died were all ruthless people. However, for an evolver lord, it was a very good choice to let the army under his command, especially the undead army that was 100% obedient, learn the self-destruction ability. For example, now, the self-destruction of a few dozen underworld demon army soldiers could cover the escape of the main army. If the other party chased after them without caring about anything, they could still trick the other party. However, there were good and bad self-destruction abilities. The underworld demon army that the Tang dynasty had learned was obviously not of a high level. It was not the kind that would take effect immediately after activation, so its tactical value would be reduced. However, the underworld demon army that was covering the rear was about to self-destruct. Ordinary people would not be able to see it. It was considered good that it had a certain degree of concealment. Bai Xiaowen ordered the warriors to retreat. To Bai Xiaowen, this kind of undead army was not a threat. It was not worth taking the risk to chase after them. The underworld demon army soldiers that were covering the rear seemed to have the tendency to self-destruct. However, the weakness of martial artists was displayed at this moment. There were still a few martial artists that did not retreat with the group. They were all young martial artists that were greedy for power and continued to kill the underworld demon army soldiers that were covering the rear. It was not strange for young people to want to show their faces in front of the heroes of Jiangnan. Moreover, the revered hero LV Wang was actually so young. Although the other young martial artists were grateful to LV Wang, they were still young. Who would be willing to be a supporting character? This was not because they were jealous of LV Wang's reputation and status. It was just that in front of such an outstanding peer, any young man with a competitive heart could not help but want to show off. Then, boom! The first underworld demon army soldier self-destructed. The protective chi of a young martial artist nearby was shattered by the explosion. His body swayed left and right amidst the shockwaves. Then, the second, the third, dozens of underworld demon army soldiers self-destructed at the same time. Not good. The heroes of Iron Blood Cliff could not bear to look. Under such a chain of explosions, not even a complete corpse would be left. Bai Xiaowen was already prepared. He raised his hands and two elemental energy chains shot out. Xiu xiu. The two elemental energy chains wrapped around a young martial artist at lightning speed and brought him back to his side. Dragon catching art. The Black Sky Sect demon Li Yan used it just now. Hero LV Wang's dragon catching art is as fast as lightning. It is more than twice as strong as the dragon catching art of the Black Sky Sect demon. The surrounding martial artists of Jianghu exclaimed in admiration. The elemental energy chains were actually the technique that Li Yan had just used, dragon catching art. It was also a martial art technique that had been sealed by Bai Xiaowen with the Eye of Evolution. Now that it was used, its power was much stronger than Li Yan's, mainly because of the characteristics of the elemental energy. Chapter 1524. At the same time, Tu Fu also used his hook to drag one of the young martial artists back. However, Tu Fu's hook's flying speed was slightly slower than Bai Xiaowen's True Yuan Force, dragon capturing art. As a result, when he was dragged back, the young martial artist had already been seriously injured by the explosion. So what if he was seriously injured? At least he was better than the last two unlucky bastards. They had charged too close and didn't listen to orders to retreat. Furthermore, Bai Xiaowen's chains and Tu Fu's hook had no energy left to save them. The two unlucky young martial artists had been killed on the spot. Even their bones had been blown away. The scene of saving people and the tragic deaths of the two young martial artists had all been witnessed by the martial artists of Iron Blood Cliff. Wang Tietjiang shouted, "The Black Sky Sect's demons are truly vicious. They even self-destructed when they were about to die." Fortunately, Hero Lu understood everything and ordered everyone to retreat. Only then did we escape this calamity. Someone said, that ghost Saint Li Yan and his subordinates, where did they go? Everyone looked back at the top of Iron Blood Cliff. Li Yan and his group had already disappeared without a trace. Only a Shangqing school's disciple, Qin Changsheng, was left behind. They must have taken advantage of the chaos of the battle to sneak away. This Iron Blood Cliff is filled with the heroes of Jianghu. Where did the Li demon run off to? Who knows? After all, he is a Black Sky Sect demon. He might have some flying demon techniques that we have never seen before. Bai Xiaowen slightly narrowed his eyes. Actually, if he wanted to, he could have kept Li Yan. However, he didn't do so. The two young martial artists who had been dragged back by Bai Xiaowen's dragon-capturing art had just recovered from their shock. They hurriedly thanked Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen revealed an ashamed expression, "Unfortunately, I don't have 3 heads and 6 arms. I couldn't save all my friends from the explosion. One of them was even injured here." Sigh. An old man walked over. "Hero Lu, please don't blame yourself. You have already saved many people. Your merit is limitless. This injured young friend can take one of our Cloud Dragon Mountain's great tonics pills to stabilize his injuries." Someone recognized this old man and called out, "Cloud Mountain Lord." Only then did Bai Xiaowen know that this old man was one of the 6 lords of the 3 mountains and 5 islands who had not been roped in by the Black Sky Cult. His name was Yun Zhongli. Although Yun Zhongli's strength wasn't particularly strong and was only equivalent to a branch leader of the Black Sky Sect, his prestige in the Jianghu was quite high. Naturally, Bai Xiaowen didn't show any arrogance and cupped his hands in greeting. Soon, Yun Zhongli introduced the other sect masters. Qin Changsheng was also supported over by others to thank Bai Xiaowen for saving his life. When he faced Bai Xiaowen, he did not have the arrogance of an immortal sect disciple. This was because there was a rumor in the sect that Lu Wang was the successor of a hidden sect. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen had saved his sect previously. However, Qin Changsheng was a bit embarrassed. After all, last time, Shangqing School and Lu Wang had a bit of unhappiness because of Tangren. Bai Xiaowen was also embarrassed. He had opened the treasury of Shangqing School and even damaged a corner of the mountain protecting array. However, Bai Xiaowen was still very thick-skinned. He laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Qin, how is the situation of Shangqing School now?" Qin Changsheng was slightly relieved. The two of them tacitly agreed not to mention the previous matter. "Lu. Hero, I don't know. I was originally training outside and wanted to rush back when I heard that the sect was in trouble. However, I was caught by the Black Sky Cult on the way." Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "I received a message from the next sect master of your sect, Chen Rong, so I was rushing to Shangqing School to provide support. On the way, I heard about the Iron Blood Cliff Convention. The experts of the 3 mountains and 5 islands sent out invitations to suppress the Black Sky Cult. I felt that the heroes of the martial arts world of Iron Blood Cliff were the power to resist the Black Sky Cult, so I came over to take a look." Several people looked at the remaining 6 sect masters of the 3 mountains and 5 islands. Yun Zhongli and Cloud Mountain Lord sighed and said, "Don't mention the 3 mountains and 5 islands anymore. We were all persuaded by the Mo and Huang families to jointly send invitations to hold the Iron Blood Cliff Convention. Now it seems that we have all been fooled. Mo and Huang have already surrendered to the Black Sky Cult. The Iron Blood Cliff Convention is a conspiracy of the Black Sky Cult." Yun Zhongli and the other 6 sect masters' complexions were very bad. This was a big mistake. From now on, the reputation that the 3 mountains and 5 islands, Now the 2 mountains and 4 islands, had accumulated in Jianghu for many years, would be completely ruined. Bai Xiaowen suddenly laughed and said, "No, this Iron Blood Cliff convention is not completely meaningless." Facing everyone's gaze, Bai Xiaowen said in a clear voice, "Although the Iron Blood Cliff convention is a conspiracy of the Black Sky Cult, but under everyone's unity and brave resistance, the Black Sky Cult's conspiracy did not succeed. Instead, they left behind dozens of corpses and fled in a sorry state. Now, the Jiangnan Path's heroes of the Jianghu have not lost their strength, and their vitality is still there." From this point of view, the Black Sky Cult has instead given us a chance, allowing the heroes of the various paths to gather here, and together we can start a new chapter in resisting the Black Sky Cult. Bai Xiaowen activated the empathy technique, his voice carrying a powerful influence, reverberating in the air above the Iron Blood Cliff. If the righteous path is defeated, the demonic flames of the Black Sky Cult will be rampant. Not only will the cultivation world suffer a calamity, Jianghu will also be in complete darkness. Everyone here is a knowledgeable and courageous hero. If we can continue to unite and resist the Black Sky Cult, then the day of the Black Sky Cult's destruction is just around the corner. Even the 6 sect masters can wash away the humiliation of being toyed with by the Black Sky Cult's conspiracy today, and revive the family's reputation. If there is any friend who feels that it is difficult, and is not willing to resist the Black Sky Cult, you can bring it up, and then leave. The battle with the Black Sky Cult is very dangerous, and we cannot force it. After a short moment of silence, a wave of voices erupted from the crowd. "Fuck the Black Sky Cult. I will fight them to the death. I would like to see which coward has no balls, having someone writing on his face and shit on him, he still doesn't dare to resist, and runs away with his balls. With Hero Lu Wang taking the lead, we will go into the water, into the fire, into the fire." The 6 sect masters, with Yun Zhongli as the leader, also expressed their stance. "Hero Lu Wang, this is our last chance to wash away the stain on our names. The 6 of us will definitely not stay out of this." Wang Tietjiang shouted, "Hero Lu, Immortal Qin, and the 6 sect masters, why don't we continue the Iron Blood Cliff assembly? There is still a blood oath ceremony." The atmosphere of the crowd immediately became heated. "Yes, a blood oath ceremony. I recommend Hero Lu to be the Wulin Alliance leader." Seconded. "I agree. Who doesn't agree with Hero Lu Wang? First ask the blade in my hand." In the midst of the bustling clamor, Bai Xiaowen smiled and stretched out his hands, and the clamor immediately quieted down. In the hearts of the heroes of Iron Blood Cliff, he indeed has enough prestige and weight. Bai Xiaowen modestly declined a few words according to international practice, and then recommended the other 6 sect masters to be the alliance leader. However, which of the 6 sect masters dared to take the position at this time? They all declined modestly, and kicked the ball back to the alliance leader. In the end, Bai Xiaowen could only reluctantly take the position of Wulin Alliance leader. Chapter 1525. After becoming the Wulin Alliance leader, Bai Xiaowen presided over the ceremony of swearing blood as an alliance. The heroes of the Wulin Alliance drank the blood wine and swore an oath to destroy the Black Sky sect. Bai Xiaowen then divided the 500 Jianghu martial artists on Iron Blood Cliff into groups. Bai Xiaowen knew that these Jianghu martial artists were wild and hard to tame. It was impossible to train them into an army that obeyed orders in a short period of time. He could only play to their strengths and avoid their weaknesses. He organized these 500 people into small groups and passed his orders to the leaders of the small groups. Then, the small group leaders would lead the groups to carry out his orders. As for the standard of organization, of course, it was based on their close relationship, the degree of closeness, and the degree of mutual trust. At the very least, he could not group people who did not see eye to eye or even hated each other together. On the basis of closeness, he also had to combine the characteristics of each martial artist's martial arts and organize those with similar characteristics together. For example, some people were strong and skilled in defensive martial arts, some were as light as swallows, skilled in leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls, and some had good hidden weapons. By putting martial artists with similar characteristics together, they could highlight their advantages. This was not easy. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen's super brain could clearly see the expressions of everyone present and judge their inclination from these micro-expressions. He also had the eye of evolution. Through scanning, he could analyze the circulation of these people's aura qi and generally organize them into groups. Very quickly, the 500 martial artists present were organized into 10 groups, known as the 10 Banners, named after the heavenly stems and earthly branches. The 6 sect leaders of the 2 mountains and 4 islands naturally had to be given the position of Banner Master. Although their prestige had dropped, their strength and many years of connections were still there. It was not right to not give them the position of Banner Master. Later on, from the Gung Banner to the Gui Banner, the Banner Masters of the 4 banners were elected by the crowd. It was worth mentioning that Wang Tietjiang, who had brought Bai Xiaowen all the way from Fenglingdu, had benefited from Bai Xiaowen and was successfully elected as Banner Master of the Gung Banner. The yellow-faced man who had dared to expose the corpse King Pil and was almost killed by Li Yan was called Ma Dong Hai. He was a hero of the Liaodong region known as Sick Horse Chow and was also elected as Banner Master of the Gui Banner. During the grouping, Bai Xiaowen and Qin Changqing chatted for a while. According to the information Qin Changqing received, after the Shangqing school's headmaster went missing, the various elders led their disciples out of the mountains to search for him. Only the next headmaster, Chen Rong, and a few elders were left behind to guard the school. It was unknown where the Black Sky cult had obtained confidential information, but they were actually able to find out the Shangqing school's search and rescue team's route, and set up ambushes along the way. Their main target was Great Elder Chen Jia. When Shangqing school was alerted, Chen Jia, the first elder, had already disappeared. It was rumored that he was killed by the Black Sky sect, and some said that he was captured. Afterwards, the Black Sky cult raised a large devil army and attacked the Shangqing school. The various elders and disciples who had gone out had all returned to the sect, and some of them had exposed themselves on the way, and were captured by the Black Sky cult. Immortal Qin was one of them. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. It was not difficult for the Black Sky cult to grasp the whereabouts of the Shangqing school's elders who had gone out. Looking at the Black Sky cult's power structure, it was clear that this devil path power and the Shangqing school had taken 2 different paths of development. They had set up many branches, and the strength of each branch's leader was only at the leader level. A large number of branches meant a large number of low-level followers, allowing the Black Sky cult to extend their influence to every corner of the Shaoling Plain, and it was easy to imagine how well-informed they were. Not to mention the participation of the evolvers of the Great Tang territory, who knew if they had some special means of investigating information. The Black Sky cult attached more importance to the advantage of numbers. For example, this time's Iron Blood Cliff conspiracy was to expand their own external forces, and incorporate the heroes of the martial arts world. And the Shangqing school appeared cold and aloof, or perhaps a lot more rigid, and walked the high-end route. The inner sect had 7 or 8 elders, all of whom were leader-level experts, and could be considered a powerful force. But other than that, there were only 100 or so disciples left. In terms of individual battle strength, they were indeed outstanding, but they could not withstand the Black Sky cult's numbers. Every branch could send out a few dozen followers, and they could form a 1,000-strong devil army. Not to mention, every branch had at least 100 or 200 people. If they moved out in full force, what could the Shangqing school use to fight? Fortunately, last time at the Sword Trial Valley, Bai Xiaowen had tricked the 11 leader-level elders of the Black Sky cult. On the Cangzhou Ancient Road, he had also killed 6 branch leaders with the super-fierce Chen Rong, otherwise the pressure on the Shangqing school would be even greater. The martial group of the Iron Blood Cliff then rested for a night. Bai Xiaowen also wanted to rush to the Shangqing school as soon as possible, but there was no other way. The martial group under his command had fought with the Black Sky cult and the Underworld Devil Army for so long, they were definitely mentally exhausted and needed to rest. They weren't an army that obeyed orders, so Bai Xiaowen couldn't force them to march. Taking advantage of this period of time, Bai Xiaowen properly digested the insights he had gained from this battle. This was the first time Bai Xiaowen had used his control abilities, and he naturally had a lot of insights when facing an opponent who was also a control-type evolver. Bai Xiaowen was very clear that although he seemed to have beaten Li Chun into fleeing, in reality, he did not have the upper hand in a battle of control types. He only relied on the defensive power of the sturdy wall formation to block Li Chun's attack. The attack of the arrow formation at the back was basically a failed attempt. If not for the suppressive effect of the death god's visage on the undead army, this kind of attack was basically courting death. Unfortunately, in this Iron Blood Cliff conference, I did not understand the Black Sky Cult's scheme beforehand, and was unable to trigger the side mission. Bai Xiaowen felt that he had lost a lot of blood. The Spirit Crystal reward was secondary, the key was that he did not have the Light Sphere reward. The side mission was not that easy to trigger. It could only be triggered if he encountered a Spirit Realm native who could issue missions, or if he understood the enemy's scheme in advance and found certain evidence. Bai Xiaowen did not meet the two conditions this time, so naturally, he did not trigger the mission, which was equivalent to passively experiencing this major event. Think about it, if at Fenglingdu, when he asked Wang Tietjiang about the Iron Blood Cliff conference, the Spirit Realm's rules had given out missions, such as rescue Qin Changsheng or investigate the inside story of the Iron Blood Cliff conference, wouldn't it make evolvers vigilant and provide the corresponding outside information? Bai Xiaowen could understand. Looks like I have to meet up with Chenrong as soon as possible. This girl is a walking mission announcement board in human form. With this thought, Bai Xiaowen's consciousness sank into his sea of consciousness, and he entered a state of cultivation. There's actually another light sphere of enlightenment in my sea of consciousness, but it's transparent and colorless, so I can't tell if it's standard, elite, or hero. The standard light sphere of enlightenment was bronze, the elite was silver, and the hero was gold. Bai Xiaowen directly used this colorless light sphere. Chapter 1526. This time, the enlightenment lasted for about 40 seconds. How should he describe it? Compared to the previous two enlightenment balls, it should be closer to the 5A hero class enlightenment ball, but the duration was far shorter. It seems that although the Spirit Realm's rules won't generate missions in advance to prevent evolvers from obtaining outside information, they will make up for it afterwards. In other words, an enlightenment ball will be compensated according to the evolver's choice and performance in the event. This was a major event. Bai Xiaowen led the Jianghu heroes to defeat the Tang dynasty's underworld demon army and thwart the Black Sky Cult's conspiracy. If it was graded according to the difficulty of the mission, it should be a hero side mission, but it wouldn't reach A. After all, the opponent's strength wasn't high, and there wasn't even a Lord-level powerhouse. Bai Xiaowen invested all of the 40 seconds of enlightenment time into Tai Gong's Art of War. He once again pushed forward the cultivation progress of the first chapter of Tai Gong's Art of War. He had a new understanding of how to drill and how to use the bodyguards as a foundation to quickly form a formation. The next morning, Bai Xiaowen exited his cultivation state, still somewhat unsatisfied. I should try my best to trigger a side mission. After all, the compensation from the Spirit Realm's rules isn't as good as the reward from a proper side mission. There are also additional rewards for completion. Sister Chenrong, hold on, I'm coming. Bai Xiaowen led the Jianghu martial artists under his command all the way down the Dongshun River to the Shangqing School's encampment by Dongting Lake. Shangqing School. The protective mountain array flickered and protected the Shangqing School's inner sanctum. Outside the protective mountain array, there were a total of 12 black camps. A large number of Black Sky Cult members surrounded the Shangqing School's mountain gate. For 24 hours a day, there would be a group of cult members attacking the protective mountain array every hour. Their energy and elemental energy shot out at the same time, causing ripples to appear on the protective mountain array. For 24 hours without a break, they continued to exert pressure on the Shangqing sect. Attack. Keep attacking. I want to see how long the Shangqing School can last. Left Guardian Qiu Zhenli, who was dressed in black and had a tall and sturdy body, said in a cold tone. The Shangqing School's foundation is still very strong. This kind of attack will at most consume some of their spirit crystals. It won't hurt their muscles and bones. Right, Guardian Shaiji, who had a graceful figure, said leisurely. Qiu Zhenli sneered and said, I know that the Shangqing sect has sufficient spirit crystals. However, when the formation is fully activated, someone has to maintain it. When they are exhausted and reach their limits, they will contact with the sect leaders' attack. At the side, a refined and handsome young man smiled and clapped. Protector Qiu is wise and decisive. This Xian admires you. But Li Feng still came to the Shaoxing plain. Moreover, he came with more prestige. Taizong gave him 200 giant barbarian soldiers and ordered him to help the Black Sky sect to complete the mission of destroying the Shangqing school. Why was there such a reversal? On one hand, Li Feng was lucky. He happened to meet Qiu Zhenli of the Black Sky sect on his way to the Great Tang territory. The two sides became allies. The Great Tang territory wanted to conquer the Shaoxing plain. Now was the time when they needed people. In addition, Qiu Zhenli was roped in by the Golden Dragon token left by Li Feng. On the other hand, it was the problem of the Great Tang territory's discipline. Li Feng and Su Geng brought gifts and paid a visit to the state preceptor, Fu Jing. Then, Fu Jing used some unknown method to persuade Taizong to change his mind. He reinstated Li Feng and entrusted him with an important task. This time, I will definitely be able to achieve great merit in destroying the Shangqing school. I will suppress Li Chun's limelight. Li Feng was secretly pleased with himself. He used Uncle Geng's connections to make friends with all the evolvers in the Great Tang territory during this expedition and isolated Li Chun. In the end, he kicked Li Chun out of the ranks of the encirclement of the Shangqing sect and sent Li Chun to recruit the martial artists of the Jianghu. From Li Feng's point of view, there were so many martial artists of the pugilistic world. They were all scattered among the various small powers. Recruiting them was not something that could be done in 10 days or half a month. Not to mention others, just the 3 mountains and 5 islands were scattered at the corners of the Shaoxing plain. They were places where people rarely went. Looking for them one by one, it would take 2 to 3 months just to bring the underworld demon army along. Moreover, would the arrogant and unruly martial artists of the pugilistic world accept your recruitment? He would probably have to fight his way through them one by one. Not to mention that the recruitment mission was strenuous and unrewarding and had a high chance of failure. Even if Li Chun could complete the mission of recruiting the martial artists of the pugilistic world, it would be too late if he dragged it on for so long. The Shangqing school, which lacked soldiers and generals and had no leader, would have been conquered by Li Feng long ago. Li Feng, who was in the encirclement, did not expect Li Chun's ability to exceed his expectations. He was actually able to plan a meeting at the Iron Blood Cliff in an attempt to capture all the martial artists of the pugilistic world in one fell swoop. He also did not expect Bai Xiaowen's sudden intervention to destroy Li Chun's wishful thinking and destroy Li Chun's recruitment plan. This was probably what it meant to hit the nail on the head by a fluke. The final result of these two unexpected events was that Li Chun failed. Li Feng's plan to kick Li Chun out was successful. However, there was one thing that Li Chun did not expect the most. That was, Lu Wang, who ruined his plans last time, came again. Shangqing School, Southwest Formation Tower. Senior Chen, I don't know why, but the operation of the formation is becoming more and more sluggish, the disciple of Shangqing School who was maintaining the formation reported. Chen Rong squatted in a corner of the formation tower. One of the formation talismans is loose. Wait a minute. After Chen Rong checked it, she reset the formation talisman. Then, the disciple of Shangqing School who was maintaining the formation infused his elemental energy again. Suddenly, the formation felt much smoother and the mountain guarding formation shone brightly again. Too awesome, Senior Apprentice Sister Chen is indeed worthy of being the next sect leader of our Shangqing sect. The 3 nearby disciples all praised. Chen Rong forced a smile and said, You guys have worked hard. Hold on for another 2 hours. Junior Sha and Junior Deng will rush over and it will be your turn to rest. Senior Chen, don't worry. We can still hold on, the three disciples who were maintaining the formation said at the same time. Looking at the slightly pale faces of the three disciples, Chenrong felt a little depressed. She nodded slightly and walked down the formation tower. The mountain-protecting formation of the Shangqing sect had activated its defensive mode this time. It was the intensity of a sect war. Compared to the last time when it was activated, it was only used to trap Bai Xiaowen. Of course, it could not be mentioned in the same breath. In defensive mode, the strength of the mountain-guarding formation was not only doubled, but it could also counterattack the attacker to a certain extent. However, in this mode, experts were required to maintain the formation in each formation tower. If it was an elder, it would be easy to maintain the formation. Only one elder was needed to maintain a formation tower. But now, most of the elders had not returned. There were only 3 elders left in the school. They had to conserve their energy and prepare for the unexpected. Therefore, the heavy responsibility of maintaining the formation fell on the shoulders of the inner disciples of Shangqing School. The 3 of them had to work together to maintain a formation tower. Shangqing School had a total of 8 formation towers. The only question was, how long could they last? Chenrong's heart was heavy. Chapter 1527. Chenrong returned to the quiet room where she usually trained. She wanted to study the Shangqing treasured tome, but she could not concentrate. She sighed and took out a pair of small wooden carvings. "Mr. Liu, where are you now? Did you encounter any threats from the Black Sky sect?" This was a habit of Chenrong. Every time she felt exhausted and unable to support herself, she would take out the small wooden carvings and pour her heart out to Lu Wang. In the past, the small wooden carvings did not react at all. This meant that the other pair of wooden carvings was outside the range of her senses. Chenrong also knew that this was meaningless, not to mention that Lu Wang could not appear. Even if he did, could he really solve the Shangqing School's predicament this time? One must know that last time in the Sword Trial Valley, LV Wang was able to reverse the situation because the Black Sky cult relied on the soul refining formation to restrict the experts of the various righteous sections. And LV Wang just happened to control one of the Black Sky cult's elders, breaking the soul refining formation. The righteous experts imprisoned Yuan Qi was released, and the Black Sky cult demons naturally fled without a fight. Lu Wang's true strength was actually not above her own. This time, the Black Sky sect had launched a large-scale invasion. There were more than 1,000 people under their command, and there was also the support of a mysterious force, the giant barbarian soldiers, eyeing them covetously. Even if head elder Chenjihe returned, it would be difficult for him to get out of this predicament. It was even more impossible for Lu Wang to break 1 or 2 formations. Chenrong poured her heart out to the small wooden carvings only to relieve the mental pressure in her heart. Anyway, the wooden carvings were inanimate objects. No one would see such a weak expression on her face. If she really faced Lu Wang, Chenrong might not dare to pour her heart out. Suddenly, the small wooden carvings emitted a faint light. Chenrong was slightly surprised, then a trace of joy appeared on her face. "There's a response. Lu Wang is nearby." Chenrong's finger tapped lightly. Under the infusion of elemental energy, the talisman hidden within the wooden carvings emitted a light. It didn't take long for an uncertain voice to ring out from the rippling light mist. Hey! Can you hear me?" Chenrong clenched her fists and pressed them tightly against her chest. She was like a sailor who encountered a boat in the middle of the sea. Even though she knew that this boat might not be able to help her, in her bewildered heart, there was a kind of support. "Mr. Liu." Chenrong looked at the faintly glowing wooden carvings and said softly, Are you okay? Where are you now?" "I'm doing very well. I'm on the ferry at Dongting Lake right now. The Black Sky Sect's forces has to." Chenrong took a deep breath and suppressed her feelings of surprise. Her voice returned to normal. "Young Master Liu, thank you for coming. However, you should leave quickly." Without waiting for a reply from the other side of the light fog, Chenrong said, "You have nothing to do with the Shangqing sect, and this war has nothing to do with you. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for the sake of the Shangqing sect. Rong to Rong of the Rong. However, Miss Chen, you might not know this, but I have my reasons for coming. The reason why he had to come? It must be because of me. Chen Rong's maiden heart trembled. A trace of bittersweet joy filled her heart. Mr. Liu, you can just call me Rong. That's what my father called me when he was alive. Only the people closest to me can call me that. The voice of the barbarian Rong said, "Oh, okay. Ronger, you can call me by my name. I'm not used to always calling you Mr." Chen Rong showed a sweet smile. "Then I'll call you all on." The voice of the barbarian Rong paused. On the other side, on a pleasure boat in Dongting Lake, Bai Xiaowen was facing two small wooden carvings and almost couldn't breathe. Young Miss Chen's ability to come up with names that even deities and ghosts would avoid. I admit defeat. But there was no need to care about these details. Ah Wang, Rong understands your feelings towards Rong. Hearing the voice of the wooden carvings, Bai Xiaowen was dumbfounded. Wait. What feelings, Miss Chen, how do you understand? If Shangqing School is destroyed, Black Sky Sect's power will expand. Great Tang territory will have a spirit realm plane as its backyard, its power will also expand. Can White Phoenix territory still have good days? I had to rush over to stop and attack the allied forces of Black Sky Sect in Great Tang territory. We are allies. Although I want to rope in Shangqing School after the war and form an alliance with you to strengthen White Phoenix territory's power, but it's only limited to a pure alliance relationship. Is it really appropriate for you to attack yourself like this? Bai Xiaowen's super brain was working crazily in an instant. He heard from the other side of the light fog, Chen Rong's voice, neither too fast nor too slow, came over. Ah Wang, listen to me, Shangqing Pai is already a place of trouble. Even the major righteous sects that we usually have good relations with are not willing to get involved in this muddy water. You are alone, you can't fight Black Sky Sect. You still have a grudge with Black Sky Sect, it's better for you to quickly avoid trouble. Bai Xiaowen understood Chen Rong's meaning and smiled to reassure her. I have already met Black Sky Sect and their allied forces. 200 underworld demon army soldiers were defeated and fled. In addition, I also saved one of your junior brothers. Qin Changsheng. Now under my command, there are 500 martial arts heroes who have a heart for justice. If we coordinate from the inside and plan properly, we should be able to give Black Sky Sect, who is entrenched outside the mountain gate, an unforgettable lesson. In the barbarian Rong's voice sounded extremely surprised. 500 martial arts heroes? Awan, how did you do it? Bai Xiaowen saw that there was no one else in the room and said in a low voice, let me introduce myself. I am the newly elected Martial Arts Alliance leader. Yes, I definitely can't compare to you, the head of Shangqing School. But we have a lot of people, so we have the advantage of numbers. Isn't this what Shangqing School urgently needs right now? Chen Rong is also a woman who does big things. She didn't care too much about how Bai Xiaowen became the Martial Arts Alliance leader and the 500 Jianghu martial artists under her command. She also didn't try to persuade Bai Xiaowen to stay out of this matter. Awang, the people you brought are indeed very important. Even if compared to Black Sky Sect's demon army, there is still a gap in strength, but we have a chance to fight to the death. I will now tell you the general information about Black Sky Sect. You make the decision, how should Shangqing School cooperate? Bai Xiaowen inwardly praised Chen Rong for being a good teammate. Then he heard Chen Rong introduce the situation of Black Sky Sect. The Black Sky cult raised the Devil Army, drawing out more than 1,000 cult members from 32 branches throughout the territory. Only 25 remained, occupying the outer sect of the High Clarity sect, setting up 8 camps. And Black Sky Sect's allies, the 200 giant barbarian soldiers, were guarding the most crucial location of Shangqing School's inner gate. The Black Sky Sect's demon army's upper echelons had the 2 left and right protectors. Bai Xiaowen had seen them before. Other than that, there were also 2 demon sect consecrators. It was said that they were Jianghu seniors who were attracted by Black Sky Sect's secret technique, the source martial scripture. Their strength was extremely strong, not below the left and right protectors. There was no need to talk about the other Black Sky sect branch leaders. Chapter 1528. After hearing about the strength of the enemies besieging Shanqing School, Bai Xiaowen asked, "Why haven't I heard you mention the Black Sky Hierarch?" There's no reason for the Black Sky Hierarch to not participate in such an important war that concerns the survival of the sect. Qinrong's voice sounded from the midst of the wooden sculpture. "It's strange. There have always been rumors that the Black Sky Hierarch has gone south, but he has never appeared. However, there are rumors of the Black Sky Hierarch's appearance in Jingnan, Jiangnan, and other sections." Bai Xiaowen pondered and said, "There are two possibilities. First, the Black Sky Hierarch is busy with other matters and can't leave. This possibility is relatively small. After all, I just said that this war between sects is very important. It's hard to imagine that the Black Sky Hierarch would be held up by other matters." "What about the second possibility?" Bai Xiaowen answered, "Second, the Black Sky Hierarch has indeed come to Jiangnan sect. The reason why he is hiding and spreading the false impression of his appearance is actually to form an exchange with the other orthodox sections." Qinrong's voice had a trace of doubt. "Awang, I don't quite understand." Bai Xiaowen said, "Do you think the Black Sky Hierarch is stronger, or the combined strength of the other orthodox sects?" Qinrong said without hesitation, "Of course it's the latter. Other than the illusory sects, our Shanqing school is the strongest among the orthodox sections. However, it's not like the other sects don't have experts. Their combined strength is not to be underestimated." Bai Xiaowen understood. Just like Huaxia University in the Christian era, the Shanqing school's status was equivalent to the Qing dynasty's Yanjing University. It included the top scholars in the country. The other universities couldn't compete with it alone. However, the other universities could still produce a group of top scholars. Their strength was also very strong. Bai Xiaowen said, "The Black Sky Hierarch doesn't appear, but fakes his whereabouts. This move is like a sword hanging over the heads of the other orthodox sections. Even if the other sects want to send their elites to support the Shanqing school, they will be afraid of the Black Sky Hierarch raiding their homes. They won't dare to act rashly." After a pause, Bai Xiaowen continued, "If this possibility is true, the Black Sky Hierarch will definitely appear when the mountain guarding formation is about to be destroyed. He will destroy the formation and destroy the Shanqing school. At that time, the other orthodox sects won't have any reason to support them." Tease sect. Qinrong's voice had a hint of exhaustion. "Wang, what you said makes sense, but I don't have any good ideas. Now that the Devil Army is so powerful, even if the Black Sky cult leader isn't here, the Shanqing sect will have a hard time resisting them. How?" "The Mountain Wang." Qinrong answered, "We have plenty of spirit crystals. However, we need experts to maintain the formation. Now, many of the remaining Shanqing school disciples are exhausted. If this continues, no one will be able to maintain the mountain guarding formation in a month at most." Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. It seemed that the mountain guarding formation of the Shanqing school was different from the one in his territory. After the territory's mountain guarding formation was built, the rules of the spiritual realm didn't mention that it needed someone to maintain it. After it was built, it could be used to create a protective shield for the territory. This was a one-button camera for idiots. It was very useful. Qinrong paused for a moment. He sighed and said, "There are still 3 elders in the sect. However, they don't seem to approve of me inheriting the position of sect leader." Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. "What's their reason?" Qinrong said, "It's because I'm young and have little virtue. That's why it's hard for me to convince them. They don't feel at ease leaving the sect's affairs to me at this critical juncture." These were reasons, but also excuses. In fact, the real reason why the 3 elders didn't accept Qinrong was very simple and very realistic. It was because Qinrong had no one to rely on. Qinrong was able to become the sect leader's successor and learn the Shanqing treasure book. Who did she rely on? She had a sect leader as her master, and a grandfather who was the great elder. The two most powerful people in the sect both favored her. In addition, Chenrong's aptitude was also good. Naturally, she was chosen as the sect leader's successor. But now, it was gone. It was all gone. Sister Chenrong has no fighting spirit. This won't do. Bai Xiaowen changed to a gentle tone. He slowly advised, Ronger, don't be discouraged. At least for now, the three elders are still on the same side as you. Let's first think of a way to defeat the Black Sky sect and prove your ability in front of the elders. And I promise that I'll help you find the sect leader and the great elder. There was no reply from the other side of the wooden sculpture for a long time. Bai Xiaowen coughed. Are you listening? Chenrong's voice sounded, trembling a little. Yes, I'm here. I'm just too happy. Awang, you have to be careful too. Don't force yourself too much. Bai Xiaowen then received a notification from the spiritual realm's rules. Lord level side mission, besieging the Shangqing school, activated. Mission objective, defeat the Black Sky sect's devil army besieging the Shangqing school and remove the threat facing the Shangqing school. Mission difficulty, B, mission reward, 1000 spirit crystals. Mission time limit, none, equivalent to the remaining time you stay in Shaowei Plain. And, it wasn't over yet. The second mission notification came, hero level side mission, tracking traces, activated. Mission objective, find the Shangqing school's sect leader, Yuan Cheng, Great Elder Chenjia and escort him back to the Shangqing school. Note, if he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Mission difficulty, A+. Mission reward, 800 spirit crystals. Mission time limit, none. Bai Xiaowen was a little excited for a moment. 2 hits with 1 shot. Miss Chen, oh no, the lovely Miss Ronger, you're really a human walking mission notice board. He hadn't even met them yet, but a B-level Lord level side mission and an A-level plus hero level side mission had been sent to him. Putting aside the hero level side mission for the time being, besieging the Shangqing school was the most important thing that Bai Xiaowen urgently needed to solve. Even if he didn't trigger any mission, he had to do it just to choke the neck of the Great Tang territory. Now that he had done it, there was a reward of a Lord level side mission. How wonderful it was. Calm down, calm down. I'm a person who has seen the world. Bai Xiaowen suppressed his excitement and continued to understand the general pattern of the Black Sky sect's devil army's movements from Chenrong. After all, they were changing shifts to attack the mountain guarding array. The 8 camps took turns to attack. Then, when did the 8 camps change shifts? How long did each shift last? What was the order in which they changed shifts? He had to understand all of this. These days, apart from inspecting and maintaining the mountain guarding array, Chenrong would occasionally pay attention to the situation of the devil army on the periphery. She was still able to provide accurate information to Bai Xiaowen's inquiries. This made Bai Xiaowen very impressed. This girl was really good at leading people. Bai Xiaowen then made a strategic deployment and agreed on the action plan. Then, he bid farewell to Chenrong and ended this unexpected communication. Chapter 1529. Shangqing School, in front of the mountain protecting formation. Xian Feng, this time it's your turn to attack the formation, Sheiji's charming voice sounded, don't be lazy. Li Feng smiled, our two families are sincere partners and are as close as one family. Destroying Shangqing School is also the duty of the Great Tang territory. Right, Protector, please witness the power of my giant barbarian soldiers. Speaking till here, Li Feng suddenly raised his voice. Giant barbarian soldiers, step forward. Amidst the rumbling of footsteps, 200 giant barbarian soldiers carrying incomparably thick spiked maces walked towards the light screen of the mountain protecting formation. These giants were 2 to 3 meters tall, and the visual impact they brought to people was very shocking. The giant barbarian soldiers came to the front of the formation, swinging their spiked maces and smashing them without any fancy moves, landing on the light screen of the mountain protecting formation. Ripples appeared on the light screen. At the same time, the mountain protecting formation also had a counterattack. Every time the giant barbarian soldiers swung their maces and landed on the light screen of the formation, a slightly illusory image of a mace would appear on the light screen and smash onto the body of the giant barbarian soldier. The giant barbarian soldiers relied on their incomparably strong bodies to forcibly withstand the counterattack of the formation, their stalwart bodies not even shaking. Compared to the attacks of the other Black Sky Cult members, they were clearly much more violent. When the other Black Sky Cult members attacked the formation, they had to reserve a portion of their spirit energy to resist the counterattack of the formation, so when they attacked, they were clearly somewhat timid. Sheiji clapped and smiled. Good, such a brave elite troop, truly a reassuring ally. Li Feng laughed heartily as he glanced at Sheiji's exquisite body. Su Gong said in a low voice, "That's enough, don't fight so hard. The giant barbarian soldiers are different from the underworld demon army, the number of our territory is very limited, losing even one will cause His Majesty heartache." Li Feng smiled, "Uncle Gong, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The greatest advantage of these giant barbarian soldiers is that they can take a beating, their survivability is quite strong. This little bit of counterattack is nothing." A few miles away, Bai Xiaowen and several Jianghu martial arts masters beside him withdrew their gazes between the trees on a mountain peak. What a powerful barbarian soldier. His thwart kung fu is simply terrifying. Yun Zhongli, the banner master of Banner A, sighed. Even if this old man uses all his strength, I'm afraid I can only deal with 2 or 3 giant barbarian soldiers at the same time. If there are more than 5 of them, we can only run. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. The giant barbarian soldiers are very stupid, but practicing this kind of martial arts is their forte. In truth, Bai Xiaowen knew that the mammoth barbarian soldiers were trained in battle qi. According to Bai Xiaowen's understanding, Do Qi was an extensive type of energy. It was produced based on the strength of one's body, so its power was more than enough. However, the degree of precision in controlling it was relatively poor. Compared to Huaxia's martial artists' Gang Qi, Do Qi flowed from the outside to the inside. It was indeed similar to brute training. Explaining Do Qi to these martial artists of the Jianghu was purely a waste of time. It was better to let them understand it as thwart kung fu. Another banner master frowned and said, "These giant barbarian soldiers have more than enough strength, but their movements are slow. If it were a one-on-one battle in a small space, our juniors might be able to hold their own. However, on the battlefield, their advantage would be magnified infinitely." Everyone agreed that these 200 giant barbarian soldiers would be an extremely thorny problem. Bai Xiaowen smiled. "Alright, I mainly want to see what's so special about these giant barbarian soldiers. I already have a clear understanding of it. Alliance Chief, you have a plan?" The banner masters became spirited. Bai Xiaowen smiled. "That's right. However, before we deal with these giant barbarian soldiers, we still have to complete some preparatory work. Let's leave it to the banner masters of the first banner and second banner." Yun Zhongli and the second banner master expressed that they would obey the order. Bai Xiaowen said, "The first banner master will head west to Tanzhou. The second banner master will head east to Jiangning. The 2 of you will think of a way to get the Heavenly Mountain sect and Penglai Pavilion's attire. Let out the news, say that the Heavenly Mountain sect and Penglai Pavilion have seen that the Prime Clear is in trouble and have led their elites to help." Why is that?" Yun Zhongli was somewhat confused. Bai Xiaowen smiled. "This is a plan to split up the forces. Now that the Black Sky sect is powerful, if we don't think of a way to split up their forces, it will be very difficult to break out of this situation. If we can lure the Black Sky sect to split up their forces and head to Tanzhou and Jiangning, then the Black Sky sect demons remaining here will definitely have their forces greatly reduced. At that time, we will coordinate with the experts of the Shanqing school and obtain a complete victory." After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen continued, "The 2 banner masters only need to spread the news. There is no need to stay in Tanzhou and Jiangning for too long. After the news spreads, you will bring your men back to the Shanqing school secretly. This will not delay the next step of the strategic plan. The banner master's body shook violently. They cupped their hands in admiration and said, "Alliance chief is wise." Bai Xiaowen smiled and did not say anything. "Actually, I was lying to you, this is just my superficial goal. My real goal is to lure the Black Sky sect's leader away. At the same time, I will drag the righteous sects like Tianshan and Penglai into this war." Tianshan's sect and Penglai Pavilion were naturally inferior to the Shanqing school, but they were still considered to be one of the righteous sections. Using the previous example, these two sects were roughly equivalent to Aurora University and Zhejiang University in the Christian era. Usually, the two sects had a good relationship with the Shanqing school. The higher-ups called each other brothers and were happy and harmonious. However, when the Shanqing school was in trouble, they became brothers on the surface. Not a single one of them was willing to send reinforcements. From the standpoint of these two sects, Bai Xiaowen could understand. After all, it was better to sacrifice oneself than to sacrifice oneself. The whereabouts of the Black Sky sect's leader were mysterious. Who knew if this old fox was waiting for reinforcements from other righteous sects and exterminating the sect? According to what Bai Xiaowen had mentioned to Chen Rong, there were two possibilities regarding the whereabouts of the Black Sky sect's leader. The possibility of this was extremely high. However, if the righteous sects were frightened by the Black Sky sect's leader and waited for the Shanqing school to be destroyed, it was actually a slow death. Bai Xiaowen had spread the news and pretended that the two sects were coming to help in order to verify his thoughts. If the Black Sky sect's leader was really waiting for this wave of extermination to make a name for himself, then when he heard that the Tianshan sect and Penglai Pavilion were coming to help, he would definitely take action and lead his elites to exterminate the two sections. This way, Bai Xiaowen wouldn't have to worry about the Black Sky sect's leader suddenly appearing while he was scheming against the giant barbarian soldiers and the Black Sky sect's devil army. Moreover, the Black Sky sect's leader definitely wouldn't be able to exterminate the two sects in a short period of time. This was because the two sects didn't send their elites to help, so their sect's strength was still there. However, wouldn't this be able to pull the two sects into the battle? At that time, it wouldn't be just the Black Sky sect plus Tang sect versus Shanqing school plus White Phoenix sect, but also the Tianshan sect and Penglai Pavilion. If there was another possibility, that the Black Sky sect's leader was tied up by other matters and couldn't leave, that wouldn't be a loss. Anyway, as long as he didn't suddenly appear and affect Bai Xiaowen's plan, it would be fine. Chapter 1530. 3 days later, in the Black Sky cult camp. I think we can launch an all-out attack. At the meeting, Li Feng once again expressed his opinion, the Shanqing sect is already exhausted. As long as the hierarch and the two consecrators of the sacred cult join in, the 8 camps will definitely be able to break the mountain guarding formation. Qiu Zhenli replied expressionlessly, "No." Su Gong frowned. "Why?" Qiu Zhenli said, "The cult leader's teachings are for us to break through the mountain protecting formation before he appears. Who dares to disobey the cult leader's orders?" Sheiji chuckled. "Yes, we don't dare. Messenger Xian, you can speak to the cult leader. Maybe he'll be more polite to you on account of you being guests." Li Feng said unhappily, "I don't understand what the cult leader is thinking. Shanqing school is already leaderless. Whether it's military strength or top-notch experts, we're better than them. Why don't we wipe out Shanqing school in one go? Why do we have to do this kind of tedious work?" Qiu Zhenli's eyes revealed a trace of disdain. "Messenger Xian, you know nothing about Shanqing school's array." Sheiji laughed. "Shanqing school is proficient in the Tao of talismans. The Tao of array derived from talismans is unparalleled in the world. The easiest way to break Shanqing school's mountain protecting formation is from the inside. You just have to destroy the array tower. But from the outside, it's more than 100 times harder to break the array." Qiu Zhenli snorted and said, Shangqing School is maintaining the array with all their strength and activating the ability to counterattack. You've seen it these days. The fiercer the external attack, the stronger the counterattack. Because the mountain protecting formation absorbs a portion of our attack power and reacts it back. If the cult leader can't break through the mountain protecting formation with one attack, he will also have to bear the counterattack. Do you think Shangqing School, as the leader of the righteous path, can be destroyed so easily? A centipede dies but never falls down. Sheiji added, that's why the cult leader ordered us to form 8 camps and take turns attacking the mountain protecting formation to put pressure on Shangqing School. When they are mentally exhausted, Cult Master will break the formation in one fell swoop. This logic wasn't difficult to understand. Just like in a siege, the low-level soldiers and cannon fodder had to take turns to go into battle, exhausting the strength of the defending army and weakening their will. Under normal circumstances, no one had ever seen a commander directly charge into a city. Li Feng was a bit unconvinced. Then Zhao Zhudaran is just going to stand there and watch. Not doing anything at all? Qiu Zhenli snorted heavily, Messenger Xian, watch your words. Although the hierarch didn't make a move, the effect was much better than if he did. Why do you think we besieged Shangqing School for so long, but the other righteous sects didn't even make a splash? Sheiji chimed in, it's all because of sect leader's foresight. He appears and disappears unpredictably throughout Jiangnan, causing the other sects to tremble in fear. They're afraid that when they come to support Shangqing School, sect leader will target their hometown. Qiu Zhenli looked at Li Feng's expression and calmly added, right now, the sect master has already set off for Pingwai Island. Li Feng cried out involuntarily, why? Qiu Zhenli said, news came yesterday that Pingwai Pavilion actually sent elites to rescue Shangqing School. According to sect leader's analysis, the other righteous sects should also be unable to sit still. They also know that after the sacred sect destroys Shangqing School, it will be their turn. Therefore, they took the risk and sent their experts to help. Then what should we do? Su Gung hurriedly asked, is sect leader going to intercept the reinforcements? Sheiji chuckled, are all of you so ignorant? You don't even understand the principle of avoiding the main force and striking the weak points. Since Pingwai Pavilion has sent their elites, Pingwai Island's defense must be empty. Sect leader only needs to break Pingwai Island, massacre the entire island, and discipline the other righteous sects to keep quiet out of fear. Qiu Zhenli said, sect leader rushed to Pingwai Island overnight. Within a few days, there will be good news. We will maintain pressure on Shangqing School and wait for good news. Suddenly, a Black Sky Sect branch leader rushed over to report, not good, Lord Protectors. What's wrong? Tanzhou branch leader sent an emergency report. A large number of Tianshan sect experts passed through Tanzhou and are rushing towards Shangqing School. Bang! Qiu Zhenli slammed the table heavily. Tianshan sect is located in the remote Xinjiang, thousands of miles away from Shangqing School. They actually came to get involved in this mess, how preposterous. Sheiji said in a low voice, no matter, Tanzhou is still 2 days away. By the time the experts of Tianshan sect arrive, sect leader would have already slaughtered Pingwai Island. Tianshan sect will definitely retreat in fear and return to defend their sect. Qiu Zhenli sighed heavily, these righteous hypocrites have always been protecting themselves and pretending to be benevolent. Why did they suddenly change? Yesterday, Pingwai Pavilion already made sect leader sigh. Who would have thought that Tianshan sect would come today? Sheiji said, fortunately, they are still in Tanzhou and won't affect our plan. We just need to be prepared. The branch leader's expression was a bit strange as he said in a low voice, Protector, please calm down. There is another urgent report. Speak. Yes. There is also a group of Jianghu martial artists of unknown origin. They are using the banner of Iron Blood Alliance and have come ashore from Dongting Lake. Li Feng's eyes suddenly widened, Jianghu martial artists? Could it be that the Saint and Li Chun have successfully incorporated Jianghu martial artists and are here to help? How can it be so fast? Unbelievable. Sheiji was clearly a little surprised. clearly, she was very clear about the saint's capabilities. Qiu Zhenli smiled, looks like Envoy Li Chun is quite capable. A few days ago, Li Feng joined forces with Su Gong and the others to kick Li Chun out of the group that besieged Shangqing School. Qiu Zhenli and Sheiji, who were natives, also saw this, but they were too lazy to care. Li Feng was very upset. Why don't we go and welcome him? Envoy Li Chun has done a great job this time. Sheiji licked her lips. Li Feng quickly said, I'll go. I haven't seen my brother for many days, and I miss him. Sheiji chuckled, and Qiu Zhenli snorted. Both of them did not object, and the matter was settled. Everyone present did not know that Li Chun and Li Yan had failed to incorporate Jianghu martial artists. Even the news of LV Wang's appearance had not spread. The reason was simple. Li Chun was unwilling to admit his failure, and he did not want to be mocked by Li Feng. He also did not know that the incident at Iron Blood Cliff had been used by LV Wang to form a blood alliance and unite the Jianghu heroes. Li Chun was also brewing another plan, which was to save the country through a roundabout way. As for Li Yan, he had similar thoughts as Li Chun. He was afraid that the news of failure would spread and he would be secretly mocked by the higher-ups of the sacred sect. The saint who took the back door was also very sensitive. Chapter 1531. Therefore, this was the reason why both Qiu Zhenli and Li Feng had misjudged. Li Yan and Li Chun had hit it off and worked together to suppress the failure of the Iron Blood Cliff. After all, the plan of the Iron Blood Cliff meeting had been thought of by the two of them. They had not informed the other higher-ups of the sect beforehand, so no one would blame them for hiding it. Bai Xiaowen naturally did not expect the real situation to be so dramatic. The enemy was actually so conflicted. If Bai Xiaowen knew about this, he would definitely think of an even more ruthless plan to use the information asymmetry to trick Li Feng. But now, the information gap between the enemy was not so important. It was just the difference between starting a fight immediately upon meeting and starting a fight after a few words. Bai Xiaowen hid on the pleasure boat beside Dongting Lake and saw Li Feng leading the giant barbarian army and Wang Tiqiang leading the Gungflag group of Jianghu martial artists. Bai Xiaowen also heard the conversation between the two clearly through his spiritual sense. Li Feng, hey, you guys stop, who is the leader? Wang Tiqiang, it's me. Li Feng, full of Jianghu habits, forget it, I won't bicker with you. Bring your men and hurry to the Black Sky Cult camp and wait for orders. Wang Tiqiang was surprised, what nonsense are you spouting? Why should I listen to you? Li Feng was angry, I'm warning you, don't think that you can disobey my orders just because you followed Li Chun. Even Li Chun has to be polite when he sees me, understand? Wang Tiqiang, understand your grandma. Li Feng gritted his teeth, I won't argue with you. Where's Li Chun? And the underworld demon army, where are they? I want to ask Li Chun how he teaches his subordinates, even a third-rate character dares to scold my grandma. Do you know who my father is? Wang Tiqiang, who cares who your father is, I'm not him. Brothers, let's go. The dozens of Jianghu martial artists behind the Gungflag group responded in unison and raised their swords. Li Feng finally realized that something was wrong. It was possible that the Jianghu martial artists recruited by Li Chun were disrespectful to him. But with swords facing each other, they were definitely enemies. Giant barbarian soldiers, come and protect me. Therefore, after a few words, the two sides started fighting as expected. I really didn't expect that. Li Feng actually doesn't know what happened at Iron Blood Cliff? Bai Xiaowen shook his head in amusement. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. The effect would be better if he pretended to be a martial artist recruited by Li Chun and stabbed Li Feng when he was unprepared. But now, they could just start fighting. In any case, Bai Xiaowen already had a comprehensive plan. Wang Tiqiang and Li Feng fighting was the first part of the plan. The banner master of Gui Banner, Sick Horse Chao Ma Dong Hai, asked, Alliance Master, should we make a move? Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said with a smile, there's no hurry. the giant barbarian soldiers are slow. Even with Li Feng's wind spells, they won't be able to catch up to Wang Tietjiang. Once you're 100 steps away from the shore, you can start. After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen looked at Qin Changqing and said, "You'll play a crucial role in this battle. Are you ready?" Qin Changqing nodded and said, "I'll do my best." Bai Xiaowen patted his shoulder and said, "Don't worry. As long as you can use that move normally, our army will win." Li Feng wasn't a control-type evolver. However, control-type evolvers weren't the only ones who had the ability to strengthen their troops. For example, Li Feng was a wind elemental magician. He was good at using wind elemental magic to increase the speed of the giant barbarian soldiers. To a certain extent, it could make up for the giant barbarian soldiers' slow movement. Of course, control-type evolvers were the best at increasing the combat power of their troops. For other types of evolvers, even if they learned some control-type skills, it would be hard for them to reach the proficient level. After all, they didn't have the support of their class manuals. Control-type evolvers weren't easy to find. Even if the giant barbarian soldiers had Li Feng's wind elemental magic to increase their speed, it would still be hard for them to catch up to the Jianghu martial artists who were chasing after them. After all, the Jianghu martial artists' Qinggong and earth elemental energy allowed them to move at an astonishing speed. At least Wang Tietjiang still remembered Bai Xiaowen's instructions and slowed down a little to lure Li Feng and his men to catch up. When they arrived at the predetermined lakeside battlefield, the sounds of killing could be heard. On a pleasure boat by the lakeside, a flag was waved. Groups of Jianghu martial artists appeared from all directions and surrounded Li Feng and his 200 giant barbarian soldiers. "Who's tricking me?" Li Feng shouted. Bai Xiaowen walked out from the pleasure boat and said with a smile, "Li Feng, I trust you've been well since we last met?" "Lu Wang?" Li Feng cried out. The shock in his heart was indescribable. "You don't have to be so surprised." Bai Xiaowen looked at Li Feng and was in a good mood. Li Feng looked around nervously. However, when he saw that Bai Xiaowen only had 300 to 400 Jianghu martial artists under him and their strength was uneven, Li Feng quickly calmed down. He sneered and said, "You want to deal with my giant barbarian soldiers with just these subordinates of yours? Dream on." The 200 giant barbarian soldiers were Li Feng's greatest reliance. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said to Qin Changqing, "Let's begin." Qin Changqing nodded and formed a hand seal. Then, he suddenly slammed his palm on the ground. The wet and soft ground by the lakeside instantly turned into a muddy swamp. This type of technique that could change the terrain was not very difficult to use. It was just that the area of effect was relatively small. Under normal circumstances, when Qin Changqing used all his strength, he could only affect the ground within a radius of 100 meters. However, this was the lakeside of Dongting Lake. The net of water was dense and it was the best place to use the swamp technique. This technique, under the enhancement of the environment, increased the area of effect by several times. It completely enveloped the area where the giant barbarian soldiers were. How is this possible? Feeling a sticky force under his feet and his body sinking, Li Feng hurriedly used a wind travel technique to reduce his weight and float above the swamp. However, the cumbersome giant barbarian soldiers were sinking inch by inch. Fortunately, the power of Qin Changqing's technique was limited. The depth of the swamp was only about 3 feet. For normal people, 3 feet was already very deep. It would be very difficult to struggle free. However, for the 8 to 9 feet tall giant barbarian soldiers, this depth only reached their knees. With the strength of the giant barbarian soldiers, this level of muddy swamp would not even affect their ability to move. Qin Changqing blushed with shame and said, "Brother Lu, I can only do this much." Li Feng laughed loudly, "Ha, this is too funny." "Only to this extent? I admit that this idea is not bad, but shouldn't you at least consider your ability to use techniques?" "Ha ha ha." Burp, Li Feng's laughter suddenly stopped. He saw Lu Wang form the same hand seal as Qin Changqing and slap his palm on the muddy ground. Chapter 1532. Boom! A ring of surging true essence spread out, enveloping everything within a kilometer of the battlefield with the might of this Tao technique. Qin Chansheng was dumbstruck. Hero Lu Wang's Tao technique of transforming the terrain into a swamp was exactly the same as his, but in terms of power, it was at least twice as strong. From the way the giant barbarian soldiers sank into the swamp, it could be seen that the mud had originally only reached their knees, but now it was quickly reaching their waists, abdomens, and even their chests, and it was still sinking. The mud that had originally been 3 feet deep had been deepened to 9 feet by Bai Xiaowen. That was 3 meters deep, enough to submerge the heads of the giant barbarian soldiers. And the area that Qin Chansheng's Tao technique had not covered was 5 to 6 feet deep, enough to see the might of Bai Xiaowen's Tao technique. Bai Xiaowen sighed softly. After using the Eye of Evolution to copy Qin Chansheng's Swamp Tao technique, he used his full strength, instantly pouring out nearly 600 points of true essence. Naturally, he felt his body collapse. But on the surface, Bai Xiaowen still had a carefree expression. He straightened his back and looked at Li Feng. Li Feng's entire body was about to explode. Such a large area. Such deep mud. Mother **Ker, are you really an evolver who had just advanced a month ago? Don't tell me you're using cheats. Even the ultimate move of a beginner, level 13 and below, Lord, shouldn't be this powerful. In truth, Bai Xiaowen's current true strength was actually that of a level 12 King Realm evolver. If Li Feng knew about this, then it would not be strange for a level 12 King level expert to be able to unleash such a powerful Tao technique. The giant barbarian soldiers struggled in the swamp, but the more they struggled, the faster they sank. The mud was already up to their necks. The strength they were so proud of and their powerful physical defenses were useless in the face of this bottomless mud. On the other hand, the martial artists of the pugilistic world had exquisite control over their stellar energy and good lightness techniques. Although they could not reach the realm of treading water or treading on snow without leaving a trace, they could easily move around in this mud without worrying about sinking into the mud. There were even some martial practitioners that were playing a game of plum blossom stakes on the heads of the giant barbarian soldiers that had not completely sunk in. The giant barbarian soldiers were enraged by this and waved their thick arms weakly in an attempt to chase away these flies. But how could the martial artists of the pugilistic world be caught by the giant barbarian soldiers? Those who dared to show off their skills, their lightness techniques? Every time he took a lap, the people around him cheered loudly. Bai Xiaowen frowned slightly and sighed inwardly. After all, the martial artists of Jianghu were all unorthodox. It was basically a dream to expect them to be trained into an elite army. At the very least, it was impossible to do so within a short period of a month. The giant barbarian soldiers, one after another. Li Feng cried out in his heart. This time, he no longer had the mood to bargain with Bai Xiaowen. He directly took out the 100-mile instant jade talisman and chose to use it. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and pointed with his finger. Immediately, a bright light of a Taoist technique mark appeared above Li Feng's head. In the next second, Li Feng disappeared without a trace. The banner masters who had wanted to capture Li Feng alive looked at each other. Alliance Master, the leader has run away. What should we do? The giant barbarian soldiers are finished. Next, we should attack the Black Sky Cult camp, right? Bai Xiaowen smiled and suppressed the discussion. Releasing his spiritual sense, he sensed the approximate location of the Tao imprint and smiled. Everyone, don't worry. He can't run away. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen continued, Fellow Taoist Qin, let me borrow your divine travel talisman, not for me, but for my mount. Yes, that's right. Banner Masters, watch these giant barbarian soldiers here. Before this Lu returns, do not alert them. Go to the Black Sky Cult camp. All the Banner Masters agreed in unison. Qin Chansheng pasted a divine travel talisman on each of the Wrathclaw's 4 legs. Bai Xiaowen sat on the Wrathclaw's back. The Wrathclaw's 4 claws stirred up wind. Like an arrow leaving the bow, it chased northward. Damn that Lu Wang! Why is his Dao technique so powerful? If all 200 giant barbarian soldiers are killed, His Majesty Taizong will kill me. After using the 100 Li in an instant jade talisman to escape dozens of Li, Li Feng identified the direction, his mind a mess. However, Li Feng still forced himself to calm down. The giant barbarian soldiers should not be dead. They are just buried in the mud swamp. Although they are not like Huaxia's internal stellar energy and Taoist Yuan Li who can give up breathing, the giant barbarian soldiers can hold their breath for a very long time. They can hold their breath for at least a few hours. Fortunately, I have the 100 Li in an instant jade talisman and escaped from Lu Wang's ambush. Next, I have to hurry to the Black Sky Cult's camp and persuade the left and right guardians to help me rescue the giant barbarian soldiers. Thinking that there was still a remedy, a glimmer of hope rose in Li Feng's heart. First, I have to get rid of this Dao technique imprint on my head. Li Feng waved the magic staff in his hand and formed a seal with his left hand, casting a cleansing wind on himself. This small magic could dispel a negative status. Although its grade was not high, it had a wide range of uses. Unexpectedly, after the cleansing wind blew past, the Dao technique imprint on Li Feng's head was still shining brightly. What's going on? Li Feng's eyes widened. Although Lu Wang was a suzerain evolver, his basic priority was only one level higher than his. No matter how he looked at it, this Dao technique imprint was the lowest grade 1 Dao technique. With an additional 1 point of priority, its overall priority was only level 8. Li Feng's cleansing wind was a grade 2 spell, its dispel priority was also 8 points. According to the same grade, the dispel priority rule, the cleansing wind should be able to dispel this Dao technique imprint. Could it be that this Dao technique imprint was not as simple as it looked? Was it a grade 2 Dao technique? Li Feng did not even consider the possibility that Bai Xiaowen was a king-level expert. This was also very normal, because the strongest template an Awakened could obtain through the Grand Unification method was a suzerain evolver. It was impossible for a king-level expert to appear. Holding a stomach full of depression, Li Feng did not care about the Dao technique imprint on his head. He increased his speed and madly ran in the direction of the Black Sky Cult's camp. The 100 Li in an instant jade talisman was unable to teleport him to a fixed location, it could only randomly teleport him to a location within 100 Li. He was now more than 100 Li away from the Black Sky Cult's camp. Compared to the battlefield by the Dongting Lake, he was even further away from the Black Sky Cult's camp. If he could teleport to a fixed location, Li Feng would definitely be directly teleported to the Black Sky Cult's camp. How would he have so much trouble? After running for a few dozen Li, Li Feng heard a familiar voice. The tone was a bit cold. Halt. Chapter 1533. Hearing this cold voice, Li Feng felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if a basin of ice water had been poured down from his skull, all the way to his feet. You, Lu Wang, you have repeatedly gone against the Great Tang territory. You don't know that I am the successor of the Great Tang territory. If you dare to harm a single hair on my head, you will have to bear the consequences. Li Feng panicked in his heart and started to threaten him with false bravado. Bai Xiaowen rode the Wrath Claw and stood in front of Li Feng. He looked at Li Feng and said calmly, "Your Great Tang territory has done all sorts of evil and has lost all conscience. There are now hundreds of orphans in my territory, all thanks to your Great Tang territory's Wraith Banner project. Every one of them can't wait to eat your flesh." After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen continued. "However, I am not a person with an excessive sense of justice, nor do I have any thoughts of punishing you from the moral high ground. The only thing to blame is that the Great Tang territory has threatened me with war. From the moment the Great Tang territory's Lord Taizong threatened me with war, everyone in the Great Tang territory is my enemy. I can use any means to deal with my enemies, and I will not show any mercy." Feeling Bai Xiaowen's murderous aura getting stronger, Li Feng's eyelids twitched wildly. This Lu Wang is actually so decisive. So decisive. This is completely different from what His Majesty Taizong said. Li Feng still remembered that before he left, when His Majesty Taizong mentioned Lu Wang, he shook his head in disdain and said, "Lu Wang is a coward." "Lu Wang, you're a coward. You're afraid of my great Tang's army, and in front of my threat of war, you don't even dare to say a single word. He can only be an ostrich now and pray that I can't find the coordinates of his territory. However, this is impossible. It won't be long before my army arrives." Li Feng shouted and waved his magic wand to cover himself with a wind shield. Then, he started to form seals. 2 green chains extended from the surface of his body. This was the solidified form of the wind chain. It could be used as 2 soft whips, allowing mages to have a certain degree of close combat ability. It could be considered Li Feng's unique skill. However, Bai Xiaowen did not pay attention to him. He directly threw a talisman at Li Feng. Yellow, Bewitching Talisman. With the support of the entry-level 2 meditation mastery, the bewitching talisman struck Li Feng like a bolt of lightning. In a split second, Li Feng felt a strong will attached to a pure spiritual energy. It followed his meridians and invaded his sea of consciousness. Mind control? Li Feng's soul almost left his body. It could be said that being mentally controlled was a fate worse than death. He tried his best to adjust the magic power in his body and set up layers of barriers to resist the power of Bai Xiaowen's bewitching charm. The Wrath Claw pounced over and scratched at Li Feng's wind shield with its claws that were covered in spirit energy. The shield was broken. Whoosh! Delifa appeared in front of Li Feng like a ghost and pierced the space between his eyebrows with its spear. Li Feng's entire mind was used to resist the invasion of Bai Xiaowen's will. After his wind shield was broken, he was unable to adjust the wind chain for a moment and was pierced between his eyebrows by Delifa's spear. However, Delifa controlled its strength well. The spear only pierced an inch in and a stream of blood flowed out. Li Feng, however, felt as if his head had been hit by a heavy hammer. He retreated a few steps in dejection. The hub of magic power circulation, also known as the Achilles heel, was hit by Delifa. Li Feng's magic power was scattered in an instant. Bai Xiaowen increased the infusion of true inner force. The power of the bewitching charm instantly broke through the layers of defense and broke into Li Feng's sea of consciousness. Red light flickered on the surface of Li Feng's body. His own consciousness and the invasion of Bai Xiaowen's bewitching charm were engaged in a tug of war. Both of them were at the same level, level 12. However, Bai Xiaowen's real template was much stronger than his. In just 3 breaths' time, Li Feng's consciousness was defeated. The red light on the surface of his body shone brightly and then disappeared. Bai Xiaowen rubbed between his eyebrows and retracted his spiritual sense tiredly. Li Feng lowered his head and walked to Bai Xiaowen with his hands by his side. He did not even wipe off the blood on his forehead. He knelt and said, "Greetings, Master." Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. He closed his eyes and began to flip through Li Feng's memory fragments. After about 10 seconds, Bai Xiaowen opened his eyes. "It's just as I thought. Unintelligent armies like the giant barbarian soldiers and the Nether Demon Army are controlled by authority. Tang Dynasty's Lord Taizong has the highest authority. He can grant secondary authority to Li Feng and Li Chun. The giant barbarian soldiers obey Li Feng's orders because of Li Feng's spiritual aura. Now that I control Li Feng, it means that I can control the 200 giant barbarian soldiers." Ding! The plan worked. If it was an army with normal intelligence, it would not be controlled by authority. If it was an army with normal intelligence, it would listen to whoever the highest commander, Taizong, ordered it to listen to. Of course, if it was an army with normal intelligence, as long as Bai Xiaowen controlled Li Feng, he would still be able to indirectly control the direction of the army. However, it would definitely not be as comfortable as the giant barbarian soldiers with low intelligence and only recognized authority. For example, if Bai Xiaowen ordered the army under Li Feng to attack the Black Sky Cult's camp, an army with normal intelligence would definitely question this order. They would even be persuaded by the other Tang Dynasty's representatives, such as Su Gung and Li Chun, to surrender and be under their command again. However, it was different for the giant barbarian soldiers. With Li Feng's authority, Bai Xiaowen could give orders to the giant barbarian soldiers through Li Feng. He would not hesitate at all as long as no one with higher authority appeared. Time is of the essence. We have to hurry back and dig out those giant barbarian soldiers. Bai Xiaowen immediately ordered the Wrath Claw to carry the two of them back to the swamp battlefield by Dongting Lake. Rage Claw was still very unwilling. It felt that letting Li Feng ride on its back was simply an insult to the Wolf King of its generation. Even if I starve to death, die outside, or jump down from here, I will never carry this fellow. Oh whoa! The Wrath Claw spoke passionately through their mental connection. However, Rage Claw, who was mentally connected, was not good at hiding his thoughts in mental communication. Unless you give me more time off. I've been caught too many times recently. In the end, the Wrath Claw was successfully bought over by Bai Xiaowen's 3 months of paid leave. 3 months, it was enough time for his wife to give birth to a generation of wolf pups. What a wonderful time. The Wolf Valley was going to expand again. The Wrath Claw carried Bai Xiaowen and Li Feng as it ran towards the distant sunset. Chapter 1534. Bai Xiaowen returned to the battlefield by Dongting Lake. The martial artists of Jianghu saw how respectful Li Feng was to Bai Xiaowen and felt a little incredulous. Bai Xiaowen did not mention the matter of mind control, but made a small lie. I used the secret medicine of my sect to control Xian Feng. Through this person, I can control the giant barbarian soldiers. This person is the key to defeating the Black Sky Cult. Unfortunately, there is only one portion of the secret medicine of my sect. While the Bannermasters were shocked, they also felt inexplicably relieved. Fortunately, there was only one portion of the secret medicine of Luwang's sect. Otherwise, a person who could control other people's thoughts would be too terrifying. Through Li Feng, Bai Xiaowen ordered the giant barbarian soldiers in the mud to reach out their hands. Suddenly, thick, bony palms emerged from the mud one after another. Bai Xiaowen used a metal chain to tie the arm of a giant barbarian soldier in the mud. The other end was pulled by many martial artists of Jianghu. Like pulling radishes, the giant barbarian soldiers were pulled out one by one. After working for close to 2 hours, they finally rescued all 200 giant barbarian soldiers. The 200 giant barbarian soldiers were covered in mud and were in a sorry state. Bai Xiaowen ordered them to enter Dongting Lake to clean up. At the same time, he used the memory fragments provided by Li Feng to observe the strength of this army. The giant barbarian soldiers were indeed natural warriors. Not only were their bodies large, they also had a naturally formed layer of tough skin that could greatly reduce the damage caused by physical attacks. It also had a certain resistance to spiritual energy attacks. In addition, due to the enormous size of the giant barbarian soldiers, their melee attacks had an additional crushing effect on enemies smaller than 1/4 of their own size, 2-5 meters, about 1-9 meters. It was also considered as a cleave attack. What kind of concept was this? It was like a group of extremely tough giants waving their maces on the battlefield. As long as the height of the enemy was not higher than 1.9 meters, which was possible under normal circumstances, there was a high probability that the enemy would be knocked back by the maces. Furthermore, many enemies would be knocked back by the maces. However, the giant barbarian soldiers were not proficient in external attacks. Therefore, it was very difficult for them to coordinate their spiritual energy like the underworld demon army and gather the power of their entire army to unleash a gigantic sword chi attack that was comparable to a Lord tier ultimate move. This didn't mean that the coordination of spiritual energy was useless against the giant barbarian soldiers. If the giant barbarian soldiers had the coordination of spiritual energy, they would be able to provide assistance to their companions in battle and strengthen their companions' defense. The effect was similar to the impregnable wall array. The defensive power of the giant barbarian soldiers was already strong enough. Even without the spirit energy coordination/impregnable wall formation, their survival would not be affected. On the other hand, the slow giant barbarian soldiers needed wind magic to increase their speed. From this, it could be seen that the Great Tang Territory Lord Taizong knew how to use people well. He let the control-type evolver Li Chun lead the underworld demon army and the wind-type magician Li Feng lead the giant barbarian soldiers. Although Bai Xiaowen liked the giant barbarian soldiers very much, he still restrained himself from bringing them back to the White Phoenix domain and using them for his own use. Li Feng only had secondary authority. The highest authority over the giant barbarian soldiers was in the hands of the Lord of Great Tang, Taizong. If he couldn't change this, then the giant barbarian soldiers would become his enemy sooner or later. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen hardened his heart and planned to use these 200 giant barbarian soldiers as consumables. It would be best if they could fight to the death with the Black Sky Cult. Bai Xiaowen then discussed with the other banner masters. Actually, Bai Xiaowen already had a plan for the follow-up operation. The main reason he asked the banner masters was to see if they had anything good to take out to reduce the difficulty of the following battle. Sure enough, he gained something from this question. The banner master of the Gui banner, Sick Horse Chao Ma Dong Hai, was a famous divine doctor in the Liaodong region. Back at the Iron Blood Cliff, it was he who exposed the Corpse King Pill's plot and provoked Li Yan to use the dragon capturing art to capture him and almost used the soul-absorbing bell to extract his soul. Of course, it was Bai Xiaowen who stopped Li Yan and counterattacked with the Eye of Evolution, causing the Black Sky Cult's demon to suffer the backlash of the soul-absorbing bell. To Ma Donghai, Bai Xiaowen had directly saved his life and was even more indebted to him than anyone else. The divine doctors of the Jianghu martial artists were different from the doctors of ordinary medical centers. They were not best at treating illnesses such as colds and fevers, but rather the most common internal injuries, external injuries, and poison injuries of the Jianghu martial artists. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Ma Donghai was naturally quite knowledgeable about poisons. Hearing Bai Xiaowen ask for something to take out, Ma Donghai immediately offered up a small porcelain bottle. Alliance Master, this is the 7-step intestine-shattering powder. If mixed with wine and consumed, the poison will definitely take effect within 7 steps. Even if a Jianghu expert can use stellar energy to seal the blood vessels, it will still take away half of his life. Bai Xiaowen asked, "Is it easy for people to see through this poison?" Ma Donghai shook his head and said rather proudly, "The people of the Jianghu are all incomparably meticulous. Who would drink wine that is obviously problematic? My poison is colorless and tasteless when dissolved in water. Other than being slightly turbid, it is no different from ordinary tea. If you are not an expert in this field, you definitely won't be able to see through it." The other banner masters looked at Ma Donghai and shrunk back. Their eyes confirmed that he was a ruthless person. Bai Xiaowen was still not satisfied and asked, "Is there a poison that is even more subtle?" Ma Donghai thought for a moment and took out a paper bag. "You can mix it with the heart-cleansing powder and make the wine clear. However, the poison of the 7-step intestine-shattering powder will be weakened by 30%. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "Okay." The key to poisoning someone was to make them not suspicious. A poison that was too easy to see through would not be of much use even if it killed the person upon entering the mouth. After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen asked again, "Is there any poison that can be put in the food?" Ma Donghai took out a small porcelain bottle and introduced it again. "Is there any poison that can cause people to be poisoned just by smelling it?" Ma Donghai took out 3 specially made incense sticks. The other banner masters looked at Bai Xiaowen and shrunk back again. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "To deal with the Black Sky Cult, there is no need to talk about the righteousness of the Jianghu. Although poisoning will damage our reputation, as long as we can defeat the Black Sky Cult and reduce the casualties of our brothers, it will be worth it." The other banner masters were all experienced Jianghu people and of course expressed their understanding. No one jumped out to oppose. At this point, everyone had actually faintly guessed Bai Xiaowen's follow-up plan. More accurately, they had guessed part of it. Li Feng brought 200 giant barbarian soldiers and 100 Jianghu martial artists from the Banner C and Banner D towards the Black Sky Cult's camp. He still had Ma Donghai's various secret poisons on his body. Bai Xiaowen led the other Jianghu martial artists and quietly followed. Relying on Bai Xiaowen's powerful spiritual sense, they avoided the eyes of the Black Sky Cult and approached the 8 camps of the Black Sky Cult. Chapter 1535. Shangqing School, Inner Sect. High-level meeting. The atmosphere was solemn, so solemn that it was about to drip water. There were only 4 people in the meeting. Preparatory school head Chen Rong, and 3 suzerain-level elders, Pan Dekhang, Zhou Wuji, and Yuan Jiheng. The 4 people's faces were very ugly. Pan Dekhang opened his mouth. "Little Rong, I have already discussed your proposal with Elder Zhou and Yuan Jiheng. It is too risky. We cannot agree to it." Chen Rong said anxiously, "Martial Uncle Pan, we have no other choice now." Zhou Wuji waved his hand. "Little Rong, you are still too young. Young people are easily impatient. We 3 old farts are not deliberately trying to occupy this position and sing a different tune from you. Yes, the Shangqing school head position will be yours sooner or later. We old bones only hope that before you grow up, we can look after the school. You said to take the initiative to attack. There are too many uncertain factors." The last elder Yuan Jiheng said while stroking his beard. Chen Rong said, "Taking the initiative to attack, cooperating with young Master Lu Wang to attack from both inside and outside, there is still a chance. If we wait for Lu Wang to be defeated, how long will our Shangqing school be able to hold on?" Yuan Jiheng said, "With the mountain protecting formation, we can hold on for a while. No matter how bad it is better than closing the formation and going out to fight Black Sky Cult to death." Zhou Wuji said, "Maybe if we hold on for a month, things will take a turn for the better. Yes, the various righteous sects may wake up and rebel against Black Sky Cult. And the school head and great elder, maybe they will come back." Yuan Jiheng and Zhou Wuji, the 2 elders, spoke one after another, trying their best to describe the last hope. Chen Rong was really annoyed with these stubborn old fogies. He wished he could take out a stick and knock them awake one by one. At this time, they were still counting on the other righteous sects. Still counting on the school head to turn the tide? What was the use of relying on the mountain protecting formation to survive? At most a month, the disciples maintaining the formation will collapse. In Chen Rong's opinion, one must have the courage to cut off all means of retreat if one wanted to survive in the midst of death. The protective mountain array looked like a protective barrier, but in reality, it was also a shackle that imprisoned people's hearts. If the Shangqing school's inner core disciples wanted to rush out to help Lu Wang, they had to turn off the formation. However, this was something that these conservative elders could not accept. They would rather wait for others to rescue them than take the initiative to fight for the survival of the sect. What was even more hateful was that Shangqing school was short of masters, so they had to rely on the strength of these 3 Lord-level elders. Chen Rong looked at Pan Dekhang. "Uncle Pan, what do you think?" Pan Dekhang seemed to be in a difficult position. After thinking for a long time, he sighed and said, "Is it better to be prudent?" Chen Rong said expressionlessly, "Young Master Lu Wang has already taken control of the giant barbarian soldiers and has 500 martial artists of the Jianghu with him. This is our only chance. If we miss it, Uncle Master Pan, Uncle Master Zhou, Uncle Master Yuan." Chen Rong spoke slowly and looked at the faces of the 3 elders. "The 3 of you and I will all be sinners of the sect." The 3 elders were silent. Their original thinking was that the more they did, the more mistakes they made. The less they did, the less mistakes they made. If they relied on the protective mountain array to survive, even if the sect was destroyed in the end, it would not be their fault. They could say that they had done their best. But now, there was a rare opportunity in front of them. If they missed this opportunity and the sect was destroyed, the 3 of them asked themselves, could they still say that they had done their best? Wouldn't it be their fault if the sect was destroyed? Chen Rong stood up and said, Uncle Masters, turn off the protective mountain array and come out to help young Master Lu. I am willing to bear all the responsibility alone. If my decision leads to defeat, I am willing to destroy the Shanqing treasured book and give up the right to inherit the position of sect leader. The three elders widened their eyes. Chenrong continued, if the three Uncle Masters still do not agree, I can only call on those who are willing to follow me to fight to the death with the enemy. The three Uncle Masters will stay in the inner sect and wait to collect our corpses. Pan Dekang sighed. Little Rong, why do you have to do this? Alright, I already understand. Your determination is indeed firm. You don't have to use such words to mock us. Since you are determined to fight to the death, the three of us have some strength and can help. Zhou Wuji and Yuan Zhiheng were silent. Chenrong sighed in her heart. If this decision was defeated, would there still be Shanqing school? Without Shanqing school, what was the point of her being the sect leader? But on the surface, Chenrong smiled slightly, revealing an excited expression. Uncle Master Pan, Uncle Master Zhou, Uncle Master Yuan, don't worry. I have more than 70% confidence in this battle. As long as we unite with young Master Lu Wang, we will definitely be able to defeat Black Sky Sect and take back our sect. Black Sky Sect's subcamp, where Li Feng's giant barbarian soldiers were stationed. A banquet was held. Left Guardian Qiu Zhenli, Right Guardian Sheiji, and 7 or 8 branch master-level experts were all present. Special Envoy Xian Feng, now is the crucial moment to attack Shanqing School. You refused to send troops and instead invited us over. Why? Qiu Zhenli raised his thick eyebrows, appearing somewhat impatient. Li Feng smiled and raised his cup. Everyone, according to the rules of the Great Tang Territory, after 3 rounds of drinking, we will talk about business. Qiu Zhenli snorted and suddenly slapped the table. The wine cup on the table automatically bounced up and shot a wine arrow into his mouth. Sheiji smiled. I don't drink. Li Feng pointed at the dishes on the table and said with a smile, Right Guardian, it's fine if you don't drink. Try the specialty dishes of a famous Jiangnan chef. In order to invite this chef over, I spent a lot of effort. Sheiji picked up a piece of food with her chopsticks and made a eating action with her mouth covered. However, the food with her chopsticks slid down her black sleeves. Sheiji even made a series of actions of chewing and swallowing. Her acting skills were superb. Branch Masters, please don't stand on ceremony. For the friendship between our 2 families, please drink. Li Feng politely urged them to drink. After 3 rounds of drinking, Qiu Zhenli said, What is it? Can Special Envoy Xian Feng say it? Li Feng smiled. It's like this. When I went to welcome the recruited martial artists of the pugilistic world, I received a letter from Li Chan. Our Great Tang Territory will have new movements in the near future. We will send out the 3rd batch of elites to support the Black Sky Sect's allies in the war. The matter of building the resonance array will require the help of the Black Sky Sect's allies. Transferring troops from the territory to the spiritual realm required a huge price. The resonance array was one of them. It required a large amount of rare materials. Furthermore, every subsequent batch of troops would require a huge amount of spirit crystals. There's such a thing? How come I've never heard of it? Qiu Zhenli frowned. Sheiji narrowed her eyes and asked, This kind of thing should be discussed by Mr. Su Gong, right? How come I haven't seen him? You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.